Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not. I'm not here.
And we're live.
Hello.
Welcome to 420, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's already started for me. That's part of our problem right now, everybody.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
I'm a little in my 420 element. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and I'm not high, but you are.
I'm always high. But it's a special day. It's a special day. I went beyond bullet. I brought little Bob Marley into the studio.
Oh, that's very
little
cute.
Bob. I know. I thought it was, on 420, I need to go bigger than a bullet.
We're very lucky today.
Although I have this for you.
Oh.
I'm going to fill that up for you.
Yeah, I guess I have to make the exception today.
Of course.
Today's one of those days where you just have to do it, right?
Talk about what's going on, guys.
Well, I did a video for our good friend Jordan Chariton of Status Quo earlier. I was, Bill Clinton, and let him know how I screwed people over with the crime bill and weed being legal, not that.
You left his head upstairs.
Yeah, I did. But then I was also the senator from Vermont, reminding people that if you want to get high today, you absolutely should. So go out and stuff. Well, but I totally can tell them why weed will never be legal, because I'll be back and it's totally bad for you. Terrible thing to do. But with that said, we are very fortunate because a lot of our guests are going to be coming on later. Right now, we have a very special lead-off guest.
Okay, this is very exciting. This is very exciting.
Yes. He's a funny guy. Did you know that?
We have a lot of funny people here.
Yeah, we do. You're funny how, like they say. How are you funny?
That's how you get the shit beat out of you by Joe Pesci.
Well, as George Carlin liked to say, if there's one person who I do believe can get shit done, it is Joe Pesci.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yes. And of course, he is on, he is actually, he has a show on Sirius XM Radio, which talks about important politics stuff, which will obviously be wonderful to talk about with him. And he is somebody who used to host America's Funniest Home Videos. Can you believe that? That was a trippy time.
And I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was sort of like following in the Candid Camera vein.
Well, you know him, you love him. He's a funny man. He's also very progressive politically. And we need more people in those positions of influence to be talking about the issues at bar, like legalizing this stuff.
I got to say, Josh, you know what? The problem with joints, you guys, you rollers, you go through way more weed than we do.
Can we?
Sorry. I'm just saying they waste weed by rolling. I'm just saying. It's like you definitely.
Let's see if I butcher this or
that's why I have so much weed. It's because I don't roll.
Oh, for the love of God. All right. So now we'll have 3 people complaining. All good, all good. John Fogel saying, welcome to Generational Change.
Hello there. Happy 420.
Hi. Happy 420 to you. Are you a partaker?
Even as we speak, yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Good to know. Because normally I just have my bullet in here, but on 420 I'm doing water pipe.
Well, we do have some guests.
I actually take it through an IV drip that I carry around with me all day long. So that's why if that gets in the shot, I apologize. Yes.
That's awesome.
It's probably the best kind of high.
I go through about 2 to 3 gallons of bong water a day, probably. Yes.
Okay. Do you spill it? Am I still only lose? Okay. Because I just spilled bong water today. And it's like every time it happens, I like reprimand myself like this. Like, what are you doing? Like such a loser thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No judgment here. No judgment here.
Well, I'm digging the hair. You're definitely, it's the appropriate look for this time. And, I think
pandemic mullet. I look like a goth country singer. Thank you.
Oh, it's good. Well, it's a good blend.
See, that's not a mullet.
No, it looks sort of like Beethoven had sex with Loki. That's kind of the look I'm going for.
No, I'm saying you got a little bit of that Fabio thing going on, bro. I mean,
no, I see. I could see the Loki. I could see the what's it? Tim Huddleston. I could see that a little bit. Yeah.
It's kind of like John Wick during a nationwide Moroccan oil shortage. That's sort of what I'm at right now. So. Yeah, at the salon they call this the pet hoarder. That's the name of this look. So that's what
Where are you based out of?
I'm in New York City.
Okay, so you're on our Eastern Coast time. You're not. Yeah. Okay.
The basement.
That's the basement.
This is the basement. Yeah, at night I do the radio show from upstairs. Sirius XM is only now just beginning to let us back into our studio. So I've been broadcasting from home for 2 years and 1 month now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time. So it's really nice of you. This is, I guess, our third 420 since COVID began. And I've been blessed. I've had Willie Nelson join my show on 420. Tommy Chong has done my show on 420. And I forget the other ones, but I don't know why. Like when we were kids and they would make you watch all these terrible propaganda about all the horrible things pot does to your brain, all the terrible things weed will do to your brain. I can't recall any of it right now, but you know the stuff. So
Willie Nelson is definitely like, I've been telling him for months, I'm like, that would be like my best get ever for 420 would be Willie Nelson. There's nobody like, the idea of smoking out with Willie, that's like a dream thing. Like that's something that I can't even fathom. You know, that would be the best. He outsmoked Snoop.
oh, I know. Yeah, Willie Nelson does not have a marijuana problem. He has a marijuana practice. And someday, when they've all died, I can tell the stories of all the celebrities I enjoyed hanging out with in my youth. But it's nice that, you know, to see things destigmatized. And I'm a big fan of not putting people in jail for a flower that grew here long before white people ever showed up. Thomas Jefferson grew it. George Washington grew it. Nowadays, we'd lock them up if we ever locked up wealthy white men. Thomas Jefferson smuggled rare hemp seeds out of China in the 1700s. Benjamin Franklin started our first colonial printing press with hemp paper. I'm not saying he smoked any. I'm sure lots of sober guys flew kites during thunderstorms all the time. But, you know, it's important to remember that back then, cannabis plants were as American as apple pie. And everybody knew if you smoked the top part of the plant, you would want to eat a lot of apple pie. The biggest problem with drugs in the colonies is the same as today, alcohol. They knew weed was a painkiller back in the colonial days.
Yeah. I mean, even before Big Pharma, it's always been a battle with the alcohol industry. And you know, we still see that. We still see that. And a lot of our representatives, in addition to taking Big Pharma money, take alcohol industry money. Our congresswoman takes a lot of alcohol industry money. And that definitely affects their stance on legalization.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, this is why Big Pharma is not going to want to legalize something that people can grow in their backyards. That's what scares them about it. And I also still get mad when I hear people call it a drug. It's not a drug until Pfizer takes it and turns it into a white powder in pill form.
Right. And, you know, what's interesting is, and I'd be happy to tell this to you know, the industry, I do completely support only legislation that allows for home grow. That has to be it, no doubt. But I am not someone that is going to do so. I am someone that is willing to pay other people for that service. So rest assured, to people who want to make money from it, there will still be profit to be had, even though we all can grow our own, because there's many of us that won't. Just like I don't grow my own fruits and vegetables, even though I could.
That was the biggest point of contention when they were trying to legalize it in Ohio, because they didn't want to allow for home grow.
Yeah.
And that's when all of the activist communities came up and made it very clear, either home grow or no bill.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's true. That's what, because if it does not include home grow, it gets monopolized.
Have you ever grown? Have you ever tried to grow?
Years and years and years ago, when I lived in LA, my girlfriend, now my wife, we did some in the backyard, and then it got so big, we had to give it to a friend who offered to take it and grow it for us, and then it got robbed. But I learned a little bit about the practice of it, and I once went to the Botanical Gardens in Pasadena, where they had an exhibition of George Washington memorabilia, stuff he owned. And they actually had George Washington's surveyor diary for his crops opened up to a certain page where, this is all true, he talked about how he was checking on the hemp plants and realized he hadn't separated the males from the females in time. Which means, if you know anything about growing, the phrase, if it's got balls, cut them off, because the balls will pop and pollinate, and then you can't get the cannabis flower on top of the female plants. George Washington himself grew it for that purpose, and the evidence is out there. You know, the drug war itself, as we know it, began because of racism. In San Francisco in the 1870s, opium was what everyone did, but white people ate it or they drank it, you know, the wholesome way. But Chinese people would smoke it in opium dens. And there was all this propaganda about nice young Christian people going to the heathen Chinese opium dens. So they passed a tax on imported smokable opium. And it's important because it was the first time in our country that they ever had a tax, not to raise money like the founders intended, but to control and punish behavior. And that led to a ban on smokable opium. And that led to the underworld being created and cops and judges being bought off and violence happening. And to this day, I mean, almost all of the drug war is grounded in some kind of racism. And prohibition always leads to violence. And it's really amazing to be at a time when the morality is winning. I did a whole film for PBS about the American dream and talked to so many people who have gone to jail for having this flower that, again, grew here long before Caucasians ever showed up. And to me, it just makes me proud to be an American when the way marriage equality did, when you actually see morality taking over, and that, I mean, legalized cannabis is a lot more popular than the two political parties keeping cannabis illegal.
Oh, for sure. It's a vast majority of people support legalization. Vast majority. It's not even close.
Yeah.
And that's one of the examples I use to know that we live in a dysfunctional republic where our policies do not reflect the will of the people. That to me is a sign of dysfunction. We know that most people support it. I wanted to touch back on the male-female thing because this was my anecdote about trying to grow in college.
Please,
so
because I don't really know anything about it, but this was my sophomore year in college. My friends and I thought, oh, we're going to be so smart. We're going to plant seeds. We're going to grow our own weed, right? We're going to just do it. Like it's going to happen. And we had this plant. We named her Phyllis. Turned out Phyllis was Phil. Nothing ever came from it. And this was how I learned a long time ago that sex of weed matters, people. The sex of the weed matters. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. It's again yet another area where women are superior and should be in control of everything.
This has been quite an odyssey for a lot of us politically, as I'm sure you've observed, especially doing a show on serious, couple of generations in particular, millennial and Gen Z, have had their political awakening in the last 5 to 6 years. But they're noticing that the government doesn't work for them because corporate special interests have completely captured them. Yeah. When we hone in on specific issues, such as something as simple as cannabis, I think people recognize that it makes absolutely no sense that it's not legal. It should absolutely be legal. We should completely expunge all of the drug records and commute all the sentences of people who have been arrested and incarcerated as a result of cannabis. And yet right now, one of the things that is a very valid argument, especially as we see the trending political winds going very red in the midterms, the president of the United States has a lot of power at his disposal. He could decriminalize cannabis, expunge these drug records.
2,700.
And really light a fire, no pun intended.
Well, 2,700 currently incarcerated federal people for nonviolent marijuana offenses.
And by the way, if you're looking to increase turnout, I mean, I was saying this for Hillary Clinton in 2016. You can decriminalize cannabis on the federal level. I don't like to say legalized. I like to say decriminalize it and regulate it and tax what we call the shit out of it, because a lot of states have already seen how much revenue it generates. And I thank you for using the word decriminalize, because I think we have to apply that to women's reproductive rights when we talk about criminalizing abortion. No, not overturning Roe v. Wade. Criminalizing abortion, which 77% of Americans support in all or some cases. And the language we use matters. This is an issue that a smart political party would get behind. I don't know if Joe Biden's going to get there, but I do think that if you're looking for ways to really, really motivate people to get out and make them think you've got a government that's actually doing something for them, because the only way you're going to revive the best parts of Build Back Better are if you can somehow get people off the couch. And every night on my show, I have guests on talking about these obituaries that have already been written for the Democratic Congress this November. But, forgiveness of student loans, which 40,000 people got their student loans wiped clean just yesterday, and decriminalizing cannabis on the federal level. I mean, let's turn out the vote and let's do things that are popular, that are good for local economies, and that are basic good morality.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is what makes me have the viewpoint that they don't want to win. And when I say they don't want to win, I mean the people on the inside at the top of the Democratic food chain that are really in charge, not just people registered as Democrats that are voters. The people at the top of the food chain, your Nancy Pelosi's of the world, they don't want to win. They actually like having a Republican in the White House because they don't have to do anything and they can blame them, and they raise tons and tons of money that way. Because I do believe that ultimately the people at the top of the Democratic food chain's values are very in line with the Republican values, which is corporate money. And some of them. Yeah.
I will agree with that on a lot of them, but I'm sorry, when you've got people like Senator Sanders and Senator Warren, when you've got people like the Squad, there's a lot of real truth tellers in the Democratic Party. The party itself has way too much in common with the GOP when it comes to money. And the only thing that's going to begin to have reform in this country is public financing of elections. Privately funded elections are the square root of all of our social ills from poverty on down. But I can't really, I'm somebody who voted for Ralph Nader twice. Okay. I can't really get behind the both parties are the same anymore after we just saw a racist reality show clown get into office. And we can look at anything from women's reproductive freedoms to Ukraine. and see how broadly different. I mean, look at the infrastructure spending. Look at the Republican Party that right now is nothing but a vending machine for umbrage and slogans. The reality is, if the Democrats don't seize this issue and use it as a way to motivate young people and non-white people to show up and vote, the Republicans are going to take this issue. And they're going to use this issue to get people to vote against their own self-interest.
Yeah, I don't think they're the same. I just think the people at the top of the Democratic food chain don't care which way it goes. It doesn't affect their lives.
I think the people at the top of the media chain don't care which way it goes because the media's bias is towards profit, not towards truth or information. Journalists care. Journalists care. Media doesn't. The media's only bias is eyeballs, money, clicks, dollar signs. But, you know, I mean, I've worked with Speaker Pelosi a couple of times. I've done a couple of events with her. She came on stage at a couple of our shows. I do believe that she is very pragmatic, but I also believe that there's some level of insulation in the bubble when you're in that position of power and that they don't really understand what a winner this will be. You're never going to get people who got suckered by the Republican Party for the last 40 years, these revoltingly false Christians who vote against everything Jesus ever talked about because of abortion, which Jesus never talked about. You're never going to reach the cult members, but you can get young people. You can get people who've turned 18 in the last few years. You can get people who've become American citizens in the last few years with popular reform. And you're right, a lot of it can be led by executive order. I'm usually funnier than this, but I'm very inspired by your conversation.
Well,
no, we could use, this is the perfect day for the combination of funny and serious. We usually are both.
We're also stuck in Florida. And unfortunately,
there you go.
You know,
thoughts and prayers, guys. Thoughts and prayers. Where in Florida y'all at?
We're Broward County.
South.
Right.
So, is it the 35-year anniversary of 2 Live Crew getting banned in Broward County?
I remember that. Yeah. That was now that would be like, you know, bedtime stories for people. Like that's not even that harsh now.
Oh no, I'm sorry. That album is still pretty fucking woman hating. Don't sell it short. There's levels of misogyny that shock even me in that album. God bless him.
One of the things that we've noticed in the state of Florida is that so much of DeSantis's ascension, because at this point, it's painfully obvious that he's not running for governor, he's running for president. The people who can see that understand that the other day financials came out. The leading candidate, Charlie Crist, has raised $7 million to this point. DeSantis has raised $100 million. I've heard of money having a huge impact. Yeah, but in this case, it's really, really distinct. And one of the things that we've noticed is that there are, as Jen pointed out, there are leaders within the Democratic Party, in this state in particular, that are unwilling to change in any capacity. And as a result, you are finding more and more people who are identifying as independent and are willing to vote GOP just to screw the Democrats over. And those types of wholesale changes within the party apparatus, I think, are very clear. In this state, it goes without saying that Debbie Wasserman Schultz still runs the party. That is who Jen ran against for Congress. I don't know how much
I remember.
Yep. Yeah. And so until somebody like her is no longer in a position of federal power, a lot of these things are going to continue. That's why DeSantis today has basically had the Florida Senate approve this new congressional map that's going to net the GOP
2 seats
to an additional 2 seats. So, and
that's
again,
all Don't Say Gay is about, by the way. That's all Don't Say Gay is about. It's revoltingly anti-gay. It's revoltingly homophobic. And in reality, it's not Don't Say Gay. It's go ahead and say gay, and we'll let any fucking Yahoo sue your teachers and your school district, and the taxpayers will foot the bill if you say gay. I mean, that the whole thing is coercing educators into self-censorship. And this doughy mediocrity, DeSantis, who, by the way, go ahead and take on Disney. He won by 32,000 votes, and Disney employs 77,000 Floridians. I know our Republican friends aren't very good at math, so go ahead, douchebag, and take on Disney all you want. And Nikki Fried has done my show a bunch of times as well. You know, I'm always heartened by, and speaking of agriculture, and I'm always heartened by how many good people there are in Florida. I've spent a lot of time in your state. My parents retired there, like so many. And I love Florida. It's a great state where everyone moves for the climate and then stays indoors in air conditioning to avoid the climate. But there's so many people like you guys who are the future of the party and who are going to lead it. I'm not even a Democrat, by the way. I'm an independent too. But I feel like DeSantis, we have to remember he's trying to be the smart Trump, and he is the smart Trump, but he's
Yeah.
still as dumb as a bag of wet mice. And you can't forget, I mean, 95-year-old Joe Biden would kick his ass in a debate because he is a dope. And if you don't believe he's a dope, watch his campaign commercials when he ran for governor. His entire scheme is all about making himself president. And it's possible it could happen unless Donald Trump doesn't want him to, because I am more afraid of Ron DeSantis than I am of Donald Trump. But Ron DeSantis would be a gift to progressives in this country, because for all the awful things he would do, the amount of backlash he would cause would be so much greater than what George W. Bush caused. I mean, there would be a renaissance of morality, intelligence, and decency against this doughy, fetid mediocrity. I just feel like in Florida, like so many states, and I love Val Demings, by the way, and I want to see her whoop Marco Rubio so hard. But I feel like the challenge is to get people who don't believe in voting to show up, because they're there in Florida. There's more of us than there are of them in every state. The whole name of the game, the whole way they hang on to power is to get people to not vote. And that's why, bring it back to weed, a smart political party would make this their issue, write what we call the fuck now, and get young people, people of color, and people who are against locking up innocent, nonviolent people to show up and vote in big numbers.
Yeah, and I think that, as you alluded to, there goes without saying, the number one issue that we talk about on our show is corporate special interests dominating our government. And if that issue were to ever become a central talking point, that's when a lot of these changes would come about, because people would stop getting marred down in these pointless wedge issue debates that will get us nowhere. You know, people who are pro-life versus pro-choice are 99 times out of 100 going to remain that way. People that have an opinion about LGBTQ people are more often than not going to remain that way. People who have an opinion about the Second Amendment are going to dig their heels in and say no reform whatsoever. And then you'll have others on the other side saying, you know, we really need to limit the ability to own guns. If we focus on those types of things, then, as you like to say, staying on the hamster wheel is where we will remain, and we will never get anywhere. But if we start focusing on the core issues that overwhelmingly people agree on, whether it is the environment, which is obviously the order of the day in many ways, universal health care, removing the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors, the fact that a living wage makes more sense than paying people a slave wage, which makes them get on the government dole, or the fact that we have these endless wars that are nothing other than for-profit. You know, I could keep going, but these are things that our experience on the campaign trail, you could be the bluest of the blue or the reddest of the red, and most people agree with this stuff.
Listen, I'll go a step further. I mean, the corporate profit is the entire reason we have prohibition of weed. I mean, it was back in the early part of the 20th century when William Randolph Hearst and DuPont Chemical and all these great titans of industry, they really didn't like the potential competition. Like William Randolph Hearst, you know, made newspapers, right? And he didn't like the competition from cheaper, more natural hemp paper. DuPont Chemical was threatened by that as well. And the reason we use the term marijuana for the last 80 years is because Hearst's newspapers began using the Spanish slang word for cannabis hemp to capitalize on anti-Mexican racism. Again, you can't separate the drug war from the racism, and you can't separate it from the corporate malfeasance. It was in 1970 that Nixon, who was clearly a fan of legal, taxable, pharmaceutical, mood-altering drugs, we know that, he signed the Controlled Substance Act 52 years ago, which made cannabis a Schedule I controlled substance along PCP and heroin. And it was Nixon who deigned it to be more harmful than meth and cocaine and ketamine. And this is when the prison industrial complex benefited so much from locking up what? You know who? Nonviolent drug offenders for possession of something Washington grew at Mount Vernon. And that's why today mass incarceration is a $75 billion a year business. And medical marijuana is at over 70% approval, 76% approval among doctors. I mean, it's more popular than any politician we have. And you guys know this better than me. You're the activist. I'm just a clown.
Yeah, no. And I always am very clear on my thoughts on cannabis. Like, I think it should be taxed. I think that money should definitely benefit the state. I think that when we have universal health care, which is what also we push for Medicare for all, that cannabis would be just like any other drug that could be prescribed to someone who needs it. And I have no problem with those having to be legitimate. And then the rest of us, recreational people, should have to pay taxes on it,
Yeah,
like, and
exactly.
I'm fine with that. Like, I think there need to be 2 tiers, the medicinal. And right now, the way we have it is, let's be real, the medicinal's a joke. Anybody could go get a card. I have migraines. They give you a card. So
that's not a joke. You should be able to get it to help your migraines.
No, I know that, but you could just say that. Like, you don't have to actually really have anything. You could just go in. They're like these little clinics, and you do it because basically they just want the fee that you pay to get the card. It's just about revenue for the state. They don't care whether or not you really need it. So I have no problem with it actually being somewhat stringent for medical use if we're going to provide it for free, like pharmacy, like we should provide drugs.
Well, of course, I'm a South Park fan, and South Park did an amazing job with that episode many years ago, medicinal fried chicken. If you remember, okay, so yeah, I mean, we don't need to get testicular cancer.
Everything's about South Park.
South Park, Simpsons, Seinfeld,
sports.
Yeah, those or sports.
All
you can throw those all back in there. And as a New Yorker, John can
Star Wars too. Throw that in. Let's go all the way.
That's my
Yeah, well, you're married. Well,
I'm married to like the Star Wars universe, so.
Married to it or married to someone who's part of it?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Married to someone and have offspring that have also joined in the rebellion. So there are several. They've always crowned me the dark Sith Lord of the house, and I wear that crown very well.
I'm still wearing black from episode 9. It's been 2 years. I'm still wearing black from it. So
listen, I got to tell you,
I didn't hate it as much as everyone else did.
I've never walked out of a movie before, but rest in peace. When Carrie was flying through the air like Mary Poppins, I was like, "That's it, I'm walking out."
Okay, and I still just loved it.
I didn't.
I love that. I love that movie. I think that's a terrific movie. That's
The Last Jedi. Oh,
Last Jedi is one of the best. It's fatally flawed by having a subplot where 2 characters go on an extended mission that doesn't advance the story at all. But otherwise, I think it is one. It's in my top 3 or 4 of all the Star Wars movies. Yeah,
this is where
really challenged people. Really. What's that?
What's the one you're
The Last
talking about?
Jedi, which I disagree with.
No, I mean, the one that you had a problem with. Which one didn't you like?
Oh, I mean, I could tell you the problems with Rise of Skywalker all day.
Okay,
although having said that, it's hugely enjoyable until it's over and you realize, oh my God, that was a mess, and so much they didn't solve, and so much payoff that never happened on so many character arcs. I mean, but like, you really want to talk about this? I mean, Return of the Jedi completely drops Han Solo and Lando and Chewie as characters, and Rise of Skywalker completely drops Finn and Poe as characters. Their stories just stop, and they're props for the whole movie. Boy, this is how. By the way, this conversation serves as birth control. But yeah, I know someone who smokes so much weed. He accidentally saw Avatar in 2D, so I can talk about movies and their problems all day.
Did you like Avatar?
I liked all the films it was based on.
I only saw it. I don't know anything about that genre, that industry, like nothing. And I really liked it. I thought
it's a fun movie, and I hope they bring it back in 3D before the sequels come out, because I have a kid now and I'd love to take him to see it. But Rise of Skywalker, let me tell you, I could spend all day talking about all the plot threads that weren't tied up. I mean, they literally have to make one more movie because they made such a mess with that one.
I'm pretty sure my husband's already written a dissertation on this, because like this is very highly discussed information. My son and he's 15, by the way, just yesterday was all excited about the new X-Wing Lego thing he put together.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it's a nice.
I saw in the comments, someone said Biden was terrible at debating. Look, Biden's old. Okay. He's old, but I'd rather have an old president than an evil, lying, racist, misogynist old president. I don't mind an 80-year-old guy who needs to take a nap. I actually, of all the versions of Joe Biden I've grown up with, elderly liberal Joe Biden is my favorite of all of them. For an 80-year-old guy with a speech impediment to kick Donald Trump's ass in 2 debates, Biden's good at something. He's good at drawing contrast between himself and the other guy. That's how Barack Obama beat Mitt Romney, by the way. You draw a contrast between what the other guy wants to do and what I'm trying to do. These Democrats can't show up with an IOU saying Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin ate my homework. But there's things they can do right now to remind people that if we could elect more Democrats, or if Guam and Virgin Islands and DC and Puerto Rico were states, nobody would care how bought off Sinema and Manchin are. So I didn't mean to get on a sidetrack about the comments, but it's not a hopeless cause yet. And even if it is, even if the Republicans take back the House and Senate, That's the worst thing that could happen to the Republicans. I mean, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, can you imagine how horrible his life will be when he becomes Speaker? I mean, it used to be a conservative party with a white nationalist fringe. Now it's a white nationalist party with a conservative fringe. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Paul Gosar and these other godless fake Christian douchebags, they are the party. And Kevin McCarthy's life will be a living hell of nothing getting done. And of the American people realizing the Republican Party has not done anything for non-millionaires since Nixon and the earned income tax credit. And I always ask this of every right-wing person who calls my show or all my loved ones. I say two questions. Since the 70s, what has the Republican Party ever, when on a policy level, have they ever put non-millionaires first? And I always ask, please tell me one teaching of Jesus that the Republican Party has fought for legislatively in your lifetime. I come from a very Catholic background, extremely Catholic. My mother was a nun. My father was a Franciscan brother. And I get really angry by the way the Democratic Party has allowed the Republican Party to seize Christianity the way they've seized the flag. You don't have to believe in anything in the Bible as a literal fact to use the Bible against these fake Christians and to, what I try to do, thump the Bible thumpers with the Bible. Because for me, it's all about the separation of church and hate. And if you support throwing people in jail for smoking a flower, if you support putting women in jail for terminating a pregnancy, you're not a Christian. And like the Democrats are not going to win until they stop being this piñata punching bag and start taking these issues back and say, no, motherfucker, here's the New Testament. Show me one thing that this peaceful, nonviolent, radical, brown-skinned, homeless revolutionary who was anti-slut shaming, who never asked a leper for a copay, show me one teaching of Jesus that Donald Trump is not the opposite of. And I ask this question to right-wing friends almost every day, and I've never gotten an answer. These people are beatable. We have to stop letting them set the narrative. They are not patriots. If you don't believe in getting vaccines or wearing masks to protect other Americans, motherfucker, you don't get to call yourself pro-life or a patriot. And I want to see Joe Biden grab Mitch McConnell by the lapels, smack his head onto the desk and say, does Joe Biden need to smack a bitch? I want to see that too. But these Democrats are never going to lead unless we lead.
Yeah.
We have to lead, and you guys are doing it. And events like this do it. I mean, we can drag this party into the 21st century, but we got to drag it because they're not going to lead. Politicians never lead. People lead. Martin Luther King is the reason Lyndon Baines Johnson was the greatest civil rights president of the 20th century, because he got dragged into it. And he deserves to be called the great. He was a racist who became the greatest civil rights hero we've had as a president. And it's because people made him do it. And events like this are part of it. It's going to be dragging these Democrats. And Bernie Sanders is a leader. Most of these guys are followers. So I didn't mean to get off on a long comment-based tangent, but yeah, Joe Biden's old. But Joe Biden could kick Ron DeSantis' ass in a debate with facts, empathy, and morality. That's all you need.
I'd like for that. I don't know that Joe's going to run again.
I don't know that he is either. I mean, that's the plan he is, but I don't know who would run in his place.
Well, they have nobody else. They have nobody.
You might see a cast change in the vice presidential office to rejuvenate the ticket.
Because she's not going anywhere.
I don't know. I mean, I don't hate her as much as everybody else, as much as so many progressives do either. I kind of feel like, the way progressives, I've never been a Democrat, but this whole Bernie fan versus Hillary fan civil war, Satan uses it for porn. Every time a liberal attacks a moderate or a moderate attacks a liberal, it gives Donald Trump an erection. And I'm like, can we please stop giving Donald Trump erections? Democrats always lose because of this little mentality. Fuck you for only agreeing with me on 85% of shit. And until we can get the moderates and the progressives and the liberals and the leftists all to say, hey, let's agree on a few core principles, get the job, and then fight over it, we're going to keep on seeing fascists getting more and more power. And unfortunately, America being America, humans being humans, it might have to get worse before it gets better. But at least we can get high and enjoy it.
I do think that there are serious mitigating factors. And I think the biggest reason that my experience, because I was very involved with Bernie's campaign, particularly in 2016. And the one thing that I noticed, the difference between the two campaigns, listen, there's a lot of shit talking. Obviously, the demographics are very different between the Bernie and the Hillary voter. But the core issue at hand that I noticed was that more than any other race, the stark contrast between those that were willing to accept the corruption within the system and those that were not.
Of course.
And so that fight is a fight that's still happening right now. Trump, because he is, listen, you're in New York, you know this. He's dumb as a post, but he's not as dumb as people think.
Yeah.
So he knows exactly how to play it, where he totally looks like the guy who's serving the working class people because they're my people. And so if you're going to act like that, even if it's bullshit, which of course it is, you're going to understand why people are so fed up with the system.
Totally. I'm with you all the way. But 2 points on that. Number one, you're never going to build a coalition by getting the people you need for a coalition to hate you. And this is what a lot of Hillary fans and a lot of Bernie fans never realized. And it's a fact that Bernie did more events for Hillary than Hillary ever did for Obama. So I'm with you on the facts. And also, excellent Trump impression, really strong. You don't oversell it. I do the world's worst Trump impression. People are saying my Trump impression is the worst Trump impression they have ever seen.
Let me tell you something. You're totally not allowed to do impressions of me, okay?
Oh my God, that is
not funny. You're really terrible. Believe me when I tell you, we're totally coming back in 24. We're going to make America great again. And that is what it's all about.
Let me tell you, I don't even do a Donald Trump impression. I work on my Marlon Brando. Lady or Marlon Brando, and
I remember the Brando. It was really
have a lot in common. They both want to get high and eat a lot of food and have sex with young girls. It's natural. And then I get Brando hooked on Adderall. And I've got Brando on speed. And then I give him a cold. And my impression is the perfect storm of Marlon Brando, amphetamines, and mucus for my shitty Trump impression. Okay? Yeah.
Well, let me give you my Brando, John. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. You're totally going to support me. You know why you're going to support me? Because the country was doing great when I was in power, and now Sleepy Joe's in charge, and he's doing a terrible job. So when the midterms come around and the GOP wins, and look, I've endorsed some people that will really
please. Donald Trump is the only man in history to have a shot at losing the popular vote 3 times. Please let him run. The American people said no to this guy twice. We already forget. The American people have already elected a woman president in 2016. And they didn't even like her, but they've already elected a woman. But the dead slave voters who demanded an electoral college picked Darth Jabba there. I pray.
Listen, the only reason why I didn't win the electoral vote, the only reason I didn't win is because of California. We're going to totally cut it off by the time the next election rolls around, and then I'm definitely going to win the most popular vote. I'm the most popular person at the ball. You people are terrible. Cannabis will never be legal ever. Goodbye.
And that's the thing, right? Whoever Biden faces in 2024, or whomever the Democratic nominee is, that Democratic nominee has got to run hard on not putting people in jail for weed anymore, and not putting women in jail for something that Christ never comes out against. Jesus comes out against the death penalty multiple times.
Yes.
Never mentioned. In the sermon, and you say that like, where does Jesus ever come out against the death penalty? The Sermon on the Mount, the freaking Beatitudes. He stops an execution and says only sinless people can execute. The Bible is not against abortion. God says life begins with first breath in Genesis. God makes it very clear that a woman has more value to him than a fetus in Exodus. God gives Moses gruesome tips on how to terminate a pregnancy if your wife's pregnant by another man in Numbers chapter 5. And if you think God really cares about the lives of children, let me tell you right-wing children about Passover sometime. Democrats can seize this narrative back, and they can take the great thing about the Bible is, I always say, there's not a lot of facts, there is a lot of truth. And you don't need to believe the Bible as literal fact to use it against these false Christians. It's sort of what got Jesus killed. He used the Bible against the revoltingly fake, pious, religious conservatives of his day, and they got him set up. But the Democrats are going to keep on taking a beat. I'm not saying you're going to pull people out of the matrix. I'm saying you'll inspire other people to show up, because they always say the largest growing religious group in this country are Mormons. No, the largest growing religious group are people who were raised religious, but now consider themselves spiritual because they're tired of the hypocrisy their parents were raised with, that their parents hung on to. And you can have a spiritual life without embracing bullshit fundamentalist right-wing religion. And by the way, it's all fundamental. The fundamentalist Christians and the fundamentalist Muslims are the same group.
You could throw Jews in there.
And fundamentalist Jews, fundamentalist Hindus, fundamentalist Christians have more in common with fundamentalist Muslims than they do with liberal Christians, because the fundamentalists are the ones who think women second-class citizens, sex bad, gay bad, violence okay if my side does it, and other religions are allowed to exist, but mine is superior. Oh, and by the way, I'm the victim all the time, no matter what. Jesus didn't play victim on his worst freaking day. But these fundamentalists that ruin Islam, that ruin Judaism, that ruin Christianity, they're the bad guys. And a smart political party won't be afraid to take on religious hypocrites. You can be pro-faith and anti-hypocrite douchebag.
Yeah.
And I keep waiting for the Democrats to realize it's right there. You can take it and seize the narrative.
Yeah. I actually like the way Bernie always sort of handled the religion aspect of things.
Always.
Because yeah, he always took it as a very secular, but yet a part of who he was. It was never a big deal that he was Jewish. Like that wasn't part of it really wasn't part of the narrative.
Bernie Sanders is more Christian than all these right-wing Christians. I mean, they tell me Bernie can't win because he's a Jewish socialist. I'm like, we celebrate the birthday of a Jewish socialist every December 25th. We take the damn day off.
But if you ever see, there's a speech that he gave at Liberty University that was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was really poignant. And the truth is, like, I went to a lot of Catholic schools. Like, I went to Catholic law school. I went to Catholic hospital. Like, my son went to Catholic high school. I'm Jewish, but I know enough about the Catholic.
Unlike Liberty, those are real schools.
I know, and I like nuns. And I do. And so, but there is this huge hypocrisy because the people that I've met that are truly religious people are pro-life, but they don't want to legislate it. They don't fight to have it. I have a lot of friends that are pro-life, but it isn't something they think government should be involved in. And the other thing, most of those people are also against the death penalty.
Well, you know, Jerry Falwell, segregationist, started Liberty University. I debated him once on Bill Maher, and he was bragging he was pro-life. And I said, yeah, but you support the death penalty, so you're pro some life. And, you know, that's a fake school. I mean, it's founded, but he supported apartheid in the 80s and told Americans to buy Cougarans because Desmond Tutu was a phony. And the Democrats can't call this shit out. They can't call out. I mean, Jerry Falwell Jr. even admitted finally what a revoltingly fake Christian he was. He was like the rest of them, just in it for the money. Falwell finally told the truth about one thing. And it's like the Democrats are going to keep on losing these things. And it's like, I tell my atheist friends, and some of the best Christians I know are atheists, and some of the most godless heathens I know are believers. But you don't have to believe it all to not let Republicans use it. I'm in the camouflage removal business. And this spiritual camouflage has to be torn off these motherfuckers because they don't know anything about Jesus. Their Messiah is a racist landlord from Queens.
I have always maintained, and I've maintained it probably for at least a generation now, the biggest problem with the Democratic Party is that they have been co-opted by Wall Street. The biggest problem with the GOP is they have been co-opted by the evangelical right.
And Wall Street. And
Wall Street.
Right. They have the twofer.
Yes.
They have the twofer.
But if you look at, to me, the scariest thing was not Donald Trump being president. It was Mike Pence being vice president.
I agree.
When you have a true believer like that, he's not a true believer.
He's not. And this is the media's fault. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I get crazy when I hear Mike Pence called a Christian, because when I grew up, you guys know, you watch the news, even to this day, you have either believers, you have either right-wing fundamentalists or atheists. And that's the binary choice you're given. You're either a non-believer or you're a douchebag screaming at women outside clinics. When Mike Pence had his religious freedom law, no one ever, no one in the media ever said, where in your holy book does Jesus command you to drive the gay wedding cakes out of the temple? Like, you want to say that you get to discriminate against LGBT tax-paying citizens because of your religious beliefs. First off, okay, Rastafarians, step the fuck up. But beyond that, if you want to say that you get to discriminate because of your religious beliefs, you got to show me in your holy book where Jesus is a homophobe, because he's not. And nobody follows the book of Leviticus. If you believe Leviticus, you have to stone gay people to death. And I don't know if the homophobes have noticed.
Oh,
The gay dudes have been working out. They're ready. Did you see the 300? Holy shit. Those were some buff gay men right there.
I have to interject. I got to say, one of the funniest bits that Bill Maher ever did on New Rules was when he was going over the complete fallout of what happened with Ted Haggard. And he talked about the literal description within Leviticus when he says, working on Sunday, I really should kill him. And it's like, he delivered it so perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well,
Even better.
Literally.
It's working on the Sabbath, and technically that's Saturday. So
Yeah.
fuck you, NASCAR. And by the way, the same part of Leviticus that says that you have to stone gay men to death also says you have to stone people to death for adultery. And according to Old Testament law, that includes divorce and remarriage. So if you really believe the one part of the Bible that says being gay is wrong, my Judeo-Christian homophobic friends, you owe it to God to kill Donald Trump 2 times, which you should not do.
But people are. I had a friend in law school that he used to refer to himself. He's like, look, I'm a cafeteria Catholic. I pick what works for me.
Everyone does that.
Of course, I appreciated the self-awareness of him saying that, because that at least acknowledges that you're just doing it for whatever reason.
But that's also
No, but it's different. I'm so sorry, it's different because everyone does that. Everyone of every religion picks and chooses the parts of whatever their holy book is. The difference is some of us do it to be dicks. Some of us do it to justify cruelty. Some of us do it for convenience. Some of us do it because, look, spiritual people use religion to become better people. Fundamentalists use religion to pretend they're better people. And that's who has to be called out. And that's who Jesus called out. That's who Martin Luther King called out. That's who Gandhi called out. True, all those guys got murdered for it, but still, we got to keep on doing it. We got to keep on calling out the hypocrites because we can't allow them to use a movement that was based on love and compassion and forgiveness to justify being cruel to marginalized people. And you look at Jesus, even if you don't believe the literal book, whatever, mythology, whatever you want to believe, who does he always stand up for? Whoever's on the bottom of the totem pole, whoever's being shit on. The lepers, the prostitutes, the despised foreign minorities like the Samaritans, the tax collectors.
Yeah.
Mike Pence Christians shit on. The most marginalized, refugees, trans kids who want to use a bathroom they feel comfortable in, trans soldiers want to serve their country. They're always comedy, good political comedy, don't punch down. It's the same in religion. If you're punching down on someone weaker than you, you are literally the opposite of what Christianity is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think about when I'm looking at them building the wall. Like this was literally his whole campaign thing was building the wall.
A big, beautiful wall.
Building the wall between us and the other, and keeping the poor brown people on their side because we had. And look, if Mexico had something to offer us, like in terms of like minerals or something that we really cared about, we'd have a whole different attitude. But
I'll go beyond that. Now you guys got me all awake. Here's the deal: if any politician of any party. First off, illegals is a slur, right? You'll never hear Fox News call a white lawbreaker an illegal ever, but they any politician who says we have to do something about illegal immigration,
right?
But they don't want to lock up the white people who do the hiring, is lying to you, because there's no wall you can build at our border that is big enough to hide the gigantic help wanted sign that Americans have placed so Mexico can see. We've got the biggest help wanted sign in the world at our border, and that's why you have undocumented immigration. It is pure supply and demand. So Donald Trump has employed undocumented people since the 80s. Drug power was built by undocumented Polish labor because motherfucker doesn't want to pay American workers a living wage. So and use this, people, on your right-wing loved ones. Any politician who's talking about illegal immigrants but doesn't want to go after the white people who are dangling them their jobs, they're lying to you. And a smart Democratic Party would call this out.
And the key component right there is the fact that Trump's message about America first could actually have been a great message for people to actually take seriously. If you know that you're buying product from countries that employ slave labor, then make a conscious effort to not do that. It may cost a few extra bucks, but if you were really committed to that message, you would recognize that the reason why Mexicans come to the United States and get jobs and work for pennies on the dollar is because the people in charge hire them to work for nothing because they don't want to pay a living wage.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. I'm going to tweet that on my iPhone made in China. Hang on. Great point. Great point. There's slave labor. Thank you.
Side note, I'd like to say, and I would add that anybody who refers to a human as illegal is is not following the laws of Christ.
No,
So,
and Trump's
and I don't
illegal. Trump's
It's-
illegal.
It's just I was listening. I went on Michael Knowles last week.
Oh
and-
God, are you okay? Have you been deloused?
Let me tell you something.
That fucking guy. Let me tell you that fucking guy.
No,
Oh.
I gotta tell you, considering the way that conversation went, and the very next person he spoke to was Ted Cruz. I mean, he had to deprave himself some way. in
I'm
such
just
a-
saying. Well, here's the thing. I'll go on any platform to
So
talk
do I.
about my message because
So do
that's it. I'm talking. It's just new people. Otherwise, I'm in an echo chamber.
But are
But
you all right? Did you lose a bet? I mean, Michael is
No.
a very nice guy. I get along with him, but he's a revoltingly false Christian.
let me.
Revoltingly.
Well, I was going to say. So while I was in the little waiting area before I came on, and I'm glad that I wouldn't have talked with him about this topic, but he's referring to people as illegal aliens. Like just like his comment, illegal aliens. And I'm sitting there now. All he and I spoke about was Biden's mask mandate. So it was, that was neither here nor there.
Let me guess. He's not that pro-life when it comes to protecting other Americans.
Not so much.
much.
I'm not a mandate fan either. I don't support mandates. I just support common courtesy. But unfortunately, people don't have that. But
Correct.
the illegal is really not cool to me. Like it's weird to me that you would. And nobody's illegal. They're just not.
If you drive 56 in a 55 zone, that makes you an illegal. You'll never hear any of these people call a white person an illegal. That is a slur exclusively reserved for brown people, like Megyn Kelly and the word thug.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Megyn Kelly's. Megyn Kelly's on a whole other level. You can tell that certain people are not nice.
Well, that's the thing. They're just mean.
Yeah, Megyn Kelly's.
And I loved her as Queen Elsa in Frozen. I thought she was great. So it's really tragic.
Yeah. But again, it gets down to everyone has. There's this word in politics we like to use regarding people that like to say one thing and do something else. There's a lot of sanctimony that goes around. We really do believe that if you're going to talk about an issue, get to the core of it, or you're just bullshitting, because we don't have time for this. If you're not going to address why there is an immigration issue, if you want to call it that, we have an immigration issue because our country sucks when it comes to workers' rights. So let's be,
and that we've screwed up other countries to the point of their people have to get out of them. So if it's like a lot of the places that these people are fleeing from are because we've created disasters in their countries. So I'm not.
It brings us back to the drug war, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I did stand up for the troops in El Salvador and Honduras a few years back. Did you know we have troops in El Salvador and Honduras? We do, because of the drug war. And there, by the way, in Honduras, the Air Force Base is all made of wood, and termites were eating the base because they never thought back in the 80s it would last that long. There's a metaphor for you. We're still doing it, and their Central American refugees are fleeing our drug war violence when they show up at our border. So you can either turn away these refugees or stop supporting the drug war, but you can't do both.
I just think we need to. It's just
why
would we turn them away? Like
you know why? You know why?
But it's so. First of all, it's very non-American, and it's very non-Christian. It's very non-everything.
That's the right. The right is about pretending to be American, pretending to be a patriot, pretending to be a Christian. That's the whole
that's
thing.
patriotism. People don't understand the difference.
That's why the Democratic Party has to take those words back and call out their bullshit, because young people get it. And you'll never pull these Trumpers out of the cult, but you'll reach their kids and you'll reach the bystanders.
I try to explain to people, there's a very big difference between patriotism and nationalism. And when you say patriotism, you're about caring for your countrymen. Well, my countrymen are anybody that's here. Yeah. Those are my countrymen, right? So it's not fighting for a government. That's right. And so there's a very big difference. I actually consider myself patriotic. I don't say the pledge. I'm not pledging to a flag and I'm not saying under God, and I'm not participating in your dogma.
Wait a second. You're not celebrating freedom by doing a mandatory loyalty oath? You're not celebrating freedom with the loyalty oath? Really?
Like I would die, but look, I would die for people's freedom and liberty. Yeah. But I'm not going to pledge to the United States of America. They're very different to me.
What does that mean? It's a concept. Like, does that mean I have to pledge allegiance to Dick Cheney? Does that mean I have to pledge allegiance to Barack Obama, whoever the president is from day to day? Yeah. It's a vague concept, and I get what you're saying. I think y'all are patriots. You wouldn't be doing this if you didn't care about other people, and that's what it is. But it's not just about caring about the people; it's about caring for the soil and the water and the air we have as well. That's what patriotism is. It's about loving the values that made this country great. Listen, I would love to have a country based on Christian values. If you mean the values of Christ, Matthew 25, you take care of the poor. Jesus gathers the individuals and nations and says you have to take care of the poor, you have to take care of the sick, you have to take care of people in prison. Great. Sign me up. The last competent Republican president was Eisenhower. He was the last one to balance a budget and have a surplus 80 years ago. And what did Eisenhower do? Capitalism and socialism both turned up to 11. The GI Bill, the Interstate Highway Plan, incredibly progressive taxation on the wealthiest. Eisenhower would be driven out of the party today, and so would Reagan. But I'll go with what competent Republicans and actual Christians are supposed to stand for. And
yet Eisenhower put under God. Eisenhower's the one who put under God into the pledge.
And that was only to tweak the Soviets because they were godless. Right. It was all political propaganda.
Right. We have to be scared of the Russians. And what's weird is, and now I look at what's going on every day. Now I pick up news. I'm like, I'm like in Groundhog Day. I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day.
Well, the same people who hated us as kids, the same people who hated you as kids, if you didn't hate the Russians, now hate you if you have a problem with the Russians.
Right.
But what's so amazing at this point, we've seen this. It really is. This is like Bill Murray's Groundhog Day.
Ridiculous.
We have seen this movie before. We have seen these tactics before, and yet millions and millions of people still fall for this shit.
Well, because the Democrats aren't there calling it out, and I'm telling you,
they don't call it out.
The worst nightmare of Fox News, the worst nightmare of fascists, is Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on Fox News reaching those people because they can. Bernie and Liz Warren could flip conservatives over because they tell the truth about these things. And the truth is, non-millionaires have been getting ripped off in this country for 50 years. And it's reversible. If government policies got us into this mess, government policies can get us out of this mess.
Thank you for that, Hillary. Good to see you. And I think it's very important. It
was during Eisenhower.
I don't think we can, and considering, your primary profession, I don't think it can be understated how important comedy is, especially in times like this. What has been your observation in terms of the way things have changed over the last several years? I mean, we've seen, obviously, I believe Bill Maher is a friend of yours. He's been very vocal about this. Obviously, his position is much, much more moderate, but there are a lot of comedians out there that have found it very difficult to reach, new generations. I was actually at a show about a month ago. It was about 2 months ago. John Lovitz, he is still great on tour. John, if you've seen him. But ultimately, I think a lot of what has evolved is comedy is not what it used to be, and I'm wondering how you see it now. And obviously, it's become a hell of a lot more politicized, and not necessarily in a good way. How do you see it?
Well, I don't really believe in this cancel culture shit, and most of the big comedians who are complaining about not being able to say what you want on stage at colleges don't play colleges anyway. And I love Bill. He's been very good to me over the years, but Bill is always a lot more libertarian when there's a Democrat in office, and a lot more liberal when there's a conservative in office. Go back to Clinton. He's a contrarian, and that's always been his thing. I think what's changed the most is that social media has really cemented us into the divided tribes of America, especially from like 2011 to 2015 under Barack Obama. I mean, they found a way, instead of having it be a way for us to get information and for all of us to be more educated, they have found a way to keep the uneducated in a bubble that gets them angry with a 24/7 umbrage machine. And that's what it is. And the greatest thing that unites the left and the right is we are all addicted to umbrage. We all love to be offended. We all love to be outraged. I don't believe in cancel culture. I don't think it really exists. We have consequence culture, and it's very unevenly distributed. But I always ask my right-wing friends to name one person who's been canceled who didn't deserve it. Most of these people aren't canceled. They're just not allowed to be celebrities anymore. The death penalty, that's cancel culture. So, I mean, in terms of comedy, it's always evolving. And I think in many ways, comedy's gotten better because there's a lot of new ways for comics to reach greater audiences thanks to social media. The stigmas and prejudice against women comics when I was growing up have been destroyed in the last 10 years. And it's amazing to see. It's so thrilling to see. And these douchebags in clubs that harass women, it's never been harder for a predator to prey on children or women than it is right now in our lifetime, because men and women have stopped being victims and they've become survivors, and they've begun telling the story. And the more we talk about it, the harder it is for evil people to get away with these predations. but I do think that in terms of comedy, there have been a lot of things have gotten better, a lot of things have gotten worse. But I feel that one of the things that has really just changed the most is that social media has made our divisions even greater. And we used to, as liberals, have to debate women's rights, immigrant rights, LGBT rights, children's rights. Now we have to debate whether the sky is blue and 2 + 2 is 4. One thing I often do with right-wingers, and I do have to run, guys, I'm sorry, but one thing I often do with right-wingers is when they call me, I'll just cut through the bullshit. I'll say, can I ask you a simple question? Where was Barack Obama born? And I always ask the question because I want to see if they value Donald Trump's racism and lies over objective truth. And they'll say, I don't know where he's born. Doesn't matter. Well, he claims he was born in Hawaii. I have no reason to disbelieve him. They can't come out and say he was born in the U.S. And Donald Trump admitted on September 16th, 2016, that Barack Obama was born here. And then he lied and said Hillary started it. She never said it once. Most of these people don't know that Trump finally admitted it because their media never told them. It's the golden age of niche news where we go for affirmation, not information, and people can really, truly be in a bubble. And I don't think it's as true of the left at all. The left is too busy fighting each other and they're exchanging ideas. The right, they're allowed to live in this bubble and they don't know the incredible economic successes this very moderate Biden administration's already had. So to me, that's the greatest thing that's changed is not so much in the comedy, but in the audiences and how we have become more hateful and we have become more allowed to hate each other. And when I say we, I mean conservatives. I'm sorry. I think liberals have gotten better. And I think conservatives have just gotten to be angrier, dumber, and meaner. I call them the illiterati, or I should say right-wingers, because there's very few conservatives left. Donald Trump has proved that. So that's why I think we have to use conservative principles, what's in the Constitution, and what's in the Gospels of the Bible against these people and take away their camouflage.
Yeah, I agree. Very well said.
On that note, since you do have to run, here's to you, John, because
he's not normally
I
a
don't normally
partaker.
do this, but you're a very funny man. You're a funny guy. Funny how? I can't really say.
You guys should come on my show sometime, please. Come join us. We're every night.
On your show.
We're every night on Sirius XM from 9 to 12 on the East Coast, 6 to 9 on the Pacific. Just last night we had Mary Trump on. Tonight Glenn Kirshner's joining us. But I do a show where we have had everybody from Bernie Sanders to Julie Andrews to Jeff Bridges to Chris Christie, from Willie Nelson to Tyler Perry. We have celebrities and politicians.
Every time you say that, Willie Nelson.
Oh, yeah, he's been on our show a few times. Yeah.
Well, John, it was really great to be on your show.
Thank
and
you.
I really like this show as well. You do a really good job. And of course, you're a very funny man, and I appreciate you.
For too long, Americans have pitted their Bernie Sanders impressions against each other. What I am saying is we can all do Bernie Sanders impressions together. And together, we are the 99% of Americans who have attempted a Bernie Sanders impression.
Thank you so much. We'd love to come on your show.
Thank you. One last thing. My show is now a podcast. SiriusXM has finally let us do a daily podcast of the last night's show. It's called the John Fugelsang Podcast. You can get that on Apple, Google, and Stitcher and hear a condensed version of last night's show every morning.
Awesome.
We will put that up. Guys, make sure you check him out. I'm sure you all know who he is. But the John Fugelsang Show on the SiriusXM, the John Fugelsang Podcast on SiriusXM. Make sure you check it out. John, thank you so much. Happy
Thanks,
420. And we'll
Thank
see
you.
you soon, brother.
Be well. Thank you.
You too. So, again, we do
That was
pick
fun.
great guests
Of course we do.
on Sirius
I know.
XM,
I know.
which I happen to like very
I
much.
actually like Scat's been really nice today. You've been really nice, Scat.
Well,
You've
I
been
guess
nice.
everybody's
You've been
a
a
little
nice
high
little
today.
troll. Hopefully you've been partaking. And I seem to have rid myself of the really mean one.
Yes.
I think I
That
have.
lady has disappeared.
I think
But
so.
what I think is important to understand, and I know a lot of people are going to see this, they're going to say, well, John's missing the boat on a number of things. And look, he is right on a lot of things, and there are things that we think he's missing as well.
We can't
You
all
don't
agree on
have
everything.
to agree on everything.
No.
He agrees on universal health care. He agrees on a living wage. He agrees on ending the wars. He agrees that our country is on the wrong path right now, and we need to figure out how to get back on the right path. Now, where I think we would obviously disagree with him, and there was no point in getting marred down in it, is obviously on Joe Biden. But
Yeah.
that is where he's at, and that's fine. the bottom line is he prefers what we're trying to do versus what the party is currently doing, and that's what we're working towards.
And I would like to point out, like, we keep getting mired down in labels and politics of it, which is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but I really look at it like this, and I've said this multiple times. There's two kinds of people, really. There's people that believe we have a responsibility for the least of these, and there's people who don't think that's their responsibility. And when you believe that we have a responsibility to take care of each other and to take care of others, then you're on my team. And then we can figure out how to best do that. The political labels are not what matters.
We do need to figure out where that clicking sound is coming from.
I don't know. Well, we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, I'll have to do a test after the show.
I know. Well, we don't have an AV person. It's just Jason when he comes home, maybe can figure it out.
Well, we'll see when Alex will be able to be here.
And so, but yeah, like, to me, guys, if you believe that people are entitled to a life of dignity and a social safety net, and that we have a responsibility for the least of these and our vulnerable sisters and brothers in this universe, on this planet, then you're on my team. If you don't believe that, then there's no debate, there's no coming together, because that's just fundamentally, we can't work together. But the problem is most people in one form or another do believe we have a responsibility for the least of these. And then it becomes, well, how do we get them to put down all their other petty nonsense and focus on what we're trying to do, which is protect the least of these? It's really not that complicated. And we get mired down in all sorts of politics. And yeah, the right wing plays the wedge issues. And I'm not saying it's not important. The trans thing is really freaking me out here. Okay, this is a real problem. All of this is a problem. I'm not okay with any of it. And I'm sick and tired of people holding out one trans athlete that may or may not be skirting the system. I don't know, but I know that there's lots and lots that have been participating in sports and haven't caused any problems with skirting the system or being unjust. But we're going to focus on that one person just so that we can hit on trans people.
As long as you are not focusing on the fact that you have for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors that have no reason to exist, as long as you are not focusing on the fact that the President of the United States has the authority to implement the Defense Production Act and build a clean energy grid by the next election, not this one, but in 24. The fact that we are not focusing on the fact that the reason we advocate for a living wage is because we have a slave wage, which forces people onto welfare. Yes, these are the issues of our time, and these are the issues that most people agree on. Ultimately, if we focus on issues like trans rights, the abortion issue, Second Amendment, if we're focused on things like that, then of course, we're always going to be divided and we're never going to get anything done. So we have to be able to address these core issues with everybody and almost like, address that head on, because allowing people to fester on these issues that do not affect their daily lives is what gets people that are in media more money and clicks, and people like us that are trying to fight an uphill battle against those that frankly understand, it is like being stuck on the hamster wheel. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
I don't even want to respond.
So with that said, it is 420. We hope you guys obviously are enjoying your day. I don't know who else is going to be coming on.
It's sort of a mystery.
Yeah, this is one of those. But I think you said there was a story time?
No, I don't have a story time. But I could talk about like the history of cannabis. It actually comes from China or South Central Asia.
Oh, we can wind down on
that. That's where it's from. And yeah, people brought it over here. It didn't come here. It didn't start here in North America. That's what John was talking about, how it was brought over here by presidents and dignitaries would bring the seeds and bring the plants, I guess, the hemp plants, because it didn't grow here. That wasn't naturally here. Yeah, that's really important to me.
Yeah, well, stop paying attention to it.
I'm sorry, I have to.
So, guys, if you like our content, as we've said many times before, patreon.com/generational change. We always get, some really good guests on the show.
We can talk about the Disney thing, because that actually, I don't mind him going after Disney. Like, to me, it's sort of like they're not exactly the good guys either. And just because they're, active, they're very open and supportive of LGBTQ. And that is a very important thing for a company. And that makes me like them as a company. That in and of itself doesn't make them be a great company for a lot of other reasons.
The Democrats have a very, and again, I don't know.
Well, I was just going to talk about the thing that they're doing with this, removing their rights. Basically, Disney's rights to exist as a sovereign little state there. And that's essentially what this is. I told you a long time ago that there's this deal worked out between Disney and the state of Florida where Disney doesn't pay taxes, but they maintain all of the roads, all the highways, all this stuff. So they're basically their own little municipality. And as a result, they don't have to contribute in certain ways. It's like any other kind of arrangement. And so I do not see Disney as the good guys. They treat their employees like crap. There's a lot of Disney employees that can't even afford to exist to live near where they work. So they're not the good guys. So I don't actually mind DeSantis taking away their special sovereign rights. That doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's annoying.
The problem that we run into is that people don't like the messenger and they don't like the reasons exactly why people are doing those types of things. And I believe more than anything else that is really the issue here, is that people hate DeSantis and they don't like the fact that he's actually doing something good, and he's doing it good in a way that is completely devoid of why he's doing it in the first place. And that is the problem. Do I think DeSantis truly gives a damn about what the labor practices or the tax benefits of Disney? No, I don't think he cares at all. I think if he feels that it's going to benefit him politically.
He's just in a political pissing match. That's all this is. He's ridiculous. But I'm certainly not taking up a collection on Disney's behalf. They're not like the good guys of
and this
anything.
is no different than what happened in the first or second year of Trump's presidency when he went after probably the most violent, dangerous gang on the planet, and that is MS-13, which is based out of Honduras and El Salvador. And these are, when I say, because I've studied gang warfare, I did when I was in college, I can tell you that there are dangerous gangs, and then there's gangs like this that are basically kill squads, drug pushers, rapists, everything you could think of. And there were people that were coming to the defense of MS-13 because they didn't like Trump. And it's at some point, you have to realize that not everything is whatever our side says, it has to be the opposite of that side. That doesn't work. So if inadvertently we're in a situation right now where, the state can benefit economically as a result of Disney losing its tax exempt status, let me tell you something. That is billions.
Right.
Billions of dollars.
Do I think Disney has an agenda ideologically and socially? No. They're money. Money. That's it. It's all money.
That's it.
They are shareholders. They are money, and that is it. They don't care philosophically. They will go in whatever direction they will make the most money.
Disney is one of the most anti-worker companies in the world. Yeah. They're terrible.
They're not the good guys. So the fact that they come off like good guys because they happen to be supportive of LGBT, and they always have been, and I've always appreciated that about them. But that doesn't make them right. What Disney cares about is what can they merchandise, what characters can they make plushies out of, how many movies more
Those
they can make.
Those plushies are a lot of fun to
I'm just saying, that Disney cares about money. They don't have a sociology or an ideology. They don't have one. They just care about money.
Yeah, they do. And that is really what it's about. And so when we get marred down in these conversations about are we doing enough to push one side versus the other side, I think our actions are emblematic of what we represent. You have to be able to go into the lion's den, if you will, and find out exactly what other people think. Now, the first time Jen went on a show like Tim Pool, most of the people in the audience were cutting her up. However, her appearance on the Michael Knowles show became one where most people actually liked Jen and actually think, well, if more Democrats were more sensible and were focused on the primary issues of the day, which is what we focus on, then I could see myself, as some even said in the chat, I could see myself voting Democrat again. That's everything. Because let's face it, there were millions upon millions of Bernie voters who switched to Trump because they believe in the populist message. They want nothing to do with the corporate, bougie, liberal Democratic Party.
So elitist.
That is what turns them off. But if they hear a populist message that involves living wage, workers' rights, having a clean energy grid. I mean, look, we had Actual Justice Warrior on the show, and he's for a clean environment. And so, to me, those issues at bar are why the party really needs to, people have given up on the electoral process, and I understand that. But the electoral process is still the order of the day. We need an inside-outside strategy. And the labor movement, which is something we didn't get a chance to really talk about with John, which I thought would have been, no.
I want to.
No, don't do it. And so I really think at this point, we have to be looking for issues that we have to be looking for things that can solve the issues that we're fighting against right now. And there are people in the Democratic Party who unfortunately are a big cause for why we can't get to where we want to go. And there is one person who I am going to call out now because it's high time that it finally happened. I do not like this person at all. I never have. I always thought that he was a sanctimonious prick, and now he's going to hear it from me. David Pakman has been running a YouTube channel for, I guess, about 4 or 5 years now, and he's done very well for himself. He's built quite a platform. He's done a hell of a job.
I think he was on Michael Knowles before I was.
He actually was.
Yes, he was on Michael Knowles' show before I was.
So, with that said, this is a guy who never, ever acknowledged Jen running against Debbie, although he claimed to be a very progressive individual, not so much. And then when he advocated for regime change in Venezuela, supporting Juan Guaido, no less, that pretty much threw his progressive credentials out the window. You don't have to support Maduro, but supporting Juan Guaido means you're a total imperialist elitist. So to say otherwise is a crock of duty. But I will say this, David, the way you reacted in the texting thread the other day with Jen, not cool, dude. Not cool at all. Very disrespectful and acting like a big shot, like you're somebody whose shit doesn't stink. Doesn't work that way, buddy. Doesn't work that way at all.
Such a dick.
You are no better than anybody else, and you are what we like to refer to as you are a white Hispanic. And those types of white Hispanics are the ones that have no problem with shitting on brown Hispanics. It has been this way for generations, for centuries.
I didn't know he was Latino.
Yeah, I believe he's from Argentina. And so when you act that way, when you have that kind of an attitude and you crap on Jen,
Pac-Man.
Like, dude, seriously, who do you think you are? Who does anybody think they are? And there's a lot of people out there who are like that. But if there is one person in, I would say, progressive media, if you even want to call it that, let's just say left media. If there is one person in left media who really needs to remove the stick from his ass and get the sanctimony out of his mouth, it's David Pakman. Like, it's time, buddy. You got to grow up. Put the big boy pants on.
I just sort of think of him as like the liberal Ben Shapiro.
Well, he certainly wants to have a platform like that. So with that said, we do have another wonderful guest who has showed up for 420. If she's there,
so excited.
if she can
She's
hear us.
there.
I mean, you want to talk about a funny person. You know, John Fogelsang was absolutely correct.
We're all about the comedy today, people.
And we need more lady comedians.
Yes, we do.
I was going to say. So you know her, you love her. She's been on the show multiple times. She is a New Yorker as well. What is it about the New Yorker comedians? They're all over the place.
Well, okay, and they're in our time zone.
That is true. Kate Willett, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, Kate.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good. Are you celebrating 420?
I am not a weed user myself, but that's only because I become extremely paranoid. So sometimes I engage in CBD, but it ups the anxiety. I'm 100% pro legalization. Even if it's completely legalized, I will not partake.
Right. You're supportive of other people partaking.
Exactly. Yeah. But I just start my heart starts beating really fast, and I'm just like, what the hell is happening to me? I don't know. So
I'm a lucky guy. I never smoke, and even when I do, I don't get high. I just get mellow. So. Yeah.
Oh, nice. See, I wish that's what happened. I've experienced that maybe 2-3 times in my life, and I'm like, oh, I get why people really like this. It just doesn't usually have that effect on me. It usually makes me stressed.
I think I know why this is for people. So probably when that happened to you, around the time that was happening to you, was prior to making the progress that we've made in terms of the places that have legalization, and you can choose between indicas and sativas, and we actually sort of know really specifically what we're getting. And something that I know now is that certain personalities, like my husband is like this as well, when he uses a sativa, he gets really uncomfortable, very paranoid. He really doesn't like it. But he can tolerate certain indicas. So it just, and I think that back in the day, we didn't distinguish. It was just, you would smoke weed, whatever anybody handed you, and your reaction would be your reaction. But now I know that there's so many different kinds.
Yeah, I have tried, I've actually smoked weed a bunch of times, even though it doesn't have a good effect. I mean, I don't really know why I kept going. I live in California, so, it was around, but I definitely noticed it less with indica strains. But I think even last time I did, I smoked some indica, I still got the paranoid.
Oh, I can't put them in.
No, it's wrong.
All right, so
It
okay, well,
it bothers me.
fine. I'll edit it.
I'm not liking his pronoun usage.
Pronoun usage?
Well, it's kind of like a pronoun.
I think that's fine.
So what are you up to, Kate? What's going on up there? What are you working on?
I'm doing a couple shows tonight, and I'm also on tour with the band Jawbreaker right now. So I have some shows this weekend in Boston and Philly and DC, and I'll be in Houston, Texas soon, and I'll be in Arkansas soon. I don't know, just touring a lot and doing some writing. So, being a comedian, which is nice for your inside.
No, I was going to say, since COVID, you guys have a lot of catching up to do. There's a lot of stuff a lot of places that need to have comedy.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely really fun to be performing again. I did a few outside shows during the lockdown time. We were I don't know, it was different everywhere in the country, but in New York, I feel like everyone I know was inside for pretty much a year, till we got the vaccine. And then now it's a little bit, people are still being careful, but seeing other people in real life sometimes and stuff.
I think it's gotten to the point now where, we saw that. I literally was at the airport the other day where they said, you no longer have to wear a mask. And so my attitude has always been, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. And if you don't, you don't, because at the end of the day, people are going to do what they're going to do. And this is going to continue to fester. We've got a lot of the problems that existed as a result of COVID has so much to do with the fact that we're not a healthy country. And the fact that people who want to, for example, partake in cannabis are not allowed to, which is completely insane. And again, you're in Brooklyn, so no one is going to be told in that town, in that borough, hey, you can't smoke weed. No, of course you can, because it's a part of life and it makes life easier. Life is hard enough as it is. We have enough barriers to begin with. So adding another layer is only going to make it worse. And one of the layers we've seen has become difficult is people being able to do comedy without fear of, well, is somebody going to, not like what I have to say? That's why we were very adamant about what happened at the Academy Awards, because there's always the threat that there's some idiot in the audience who's going to not like what you have to say, and then is ultimately going to, turn this into, something that's far, far worse. I think that comedy is the great equalizer of our time. People should be able to laugh and enjoy themselves regardless of who's getting, frankly, it's all about punching up. That's what we emphasize. I feel like, and this is what we talked about with John Fogelsang before you came on, there's way too much of, people talk about cancel culture, but there's way too much of this divide right now. That's really, really bad. And have you noticed that even as you are starting to get back out on the road?
You mean in comedy, it's kind of divided, different types of comedians sort of divided?
I would say the guy's name is slipping me right now. Kyle Dunnigan. See, he does a really great impression of Biden. And it seemed like for the longest time, you're not allowed, everybody can make fun of Trump, but you can't make fun of one side. It's become so it's like certain things, certain aspects of comedy is off limits. And I kind of feel like with few exceptions, everything should be on the table. You should be able to say whatever you want, do whatever you want. Do you find that is, a thing, or it's gotten a little bit better as we've moved away sort of from the Trump era?
perform all over the country, like blue states, red states. I mean, I haven't really noticed any, I don't know. I mean, like I did a show once in Ohio, I guess, where I noticed that people were like really not laughing at anything related to Trump. Like, I think most of the time if people, I don't know, to me, like with in-person stand-up audiences, like I feel like people laugh at stuff that's funny and do not laugh at stuff that's like not funny. And I could be the same comedian, right? Like if I have like a new bit that I haven't worked out that well yet and I'm throwing it in with a bunch of like more experienced material, I don't established material, stuff that I've done a bunch of times, like, you know, pretty rare, like you can notice when a joke is like the best version of itself versus like something that's like not quite there. And I mean, like sometimes when I see people like going off about, you know, oh, audiences are so uptight, it's like, no, the audience just laughed at some super fucked up shit like a minute ago. Like that just wasn't that good of a joke, you know what I mean? So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think that, you know, we do see a lot more people, I think, caring about their feelings. Like something hurts my feelings, it offends me. I think John was right about that. Like everyone is always getting offended. And that to me, that offends me. Like if you don't want to hear something, don't hear it, get over it, move on. It's just words. Like, you know, it's not, and when you're talking about comedy, and I am very almost religiously pro speech for comedy, just like journalism. I think it's very important. And I cannot stand when if somebody says something like Dave Chappelle, I don't agree with his issues on certain things, but he's allowed to say what he wants to say. And if some people find that funny, good for them. He's not calling for violence against people, you know? So like, I'm very pro free speech for comedy ultra, you know? And
I do think that social media plays a big role as well. I think it's in so many ways, the way that we've become so introverted as a society as a result of living on social media so much. You know, I think that plays a role in our ability to communicate interpersonally, even in a place like a comedy show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know though, because it's like, I've been performing for like 10 years and I just haven't really noticed like a super difference, you know? I mean, it's like, I think that some of these like this whole cancel culture debate, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I don't love every single comedian. I love a lot of comedians, but I mean, like people like Dave Chappelle, like even if there's like people online like saying, you know, they don't like it or whatever, like dude still has like a ton of Netflix specials. I'm not a cancel culture skeptic in general. Like I definitely think that there's been people that have been like canceled, but you know, Dave Chappelle is more successful than any comedian that I personally know. And you know, it's like I think, you know, people are like, he's one of the most famous comedians, you know, not at risk of cancellation, not been canceled. And to me, I feel like some of the debate around like cancel culture and comedy is like, in a way, sort of overstating the issue. Cause I mean, a lot of like very right-wing comedians are like really successful. Like if anything, I would say that's kind of a trend in comedy right now. And, you know, I've definitely performed in some like extremely like woke rooms, and like honestly, my material it doesn't tend to offend people like that. I mean, like you know, just in terms of like I typically, my jokes are a lot about like men that I've slept with, which is like a totally acceptable woke target, like guys I personally know that suck. You know? So I'm not like an offensive comedian usually, but you know,
more to them, they might find it offensive.
I guess so, but then I also think that there's like men that try to date me just because they like actually like it's like part of their kink or something that they want to be made fun of in that way. I don't know. I don't get it. I just do me, you know, I do my job. So
men like humiliation, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, there's people in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, if
there's people in all sorts of things.
Yes, and that is one of the great things about comedy is that you don't have to name names, but you can always say, hey, there's a lot of really quirky people out there, more so than you could probably imagine.
Yeah.
And you can do that on stage. It's I think it also helps people feel a lot less weird because they know that they're not the only ones thinking things like that. And you definitely have a real talent for bringing that to life. You definitely
thank you.
So what are you working on these days, and how's life up in New York?
She's
So,
traveling.
What?
You're traveling.
Yeah, well, I'm actually at home right now till Friday. But yeah, I mean, I've just been on tour like lots. I think I've just been touring like a ton this year just to kind of, I don't know, it's been after like a year inside, it's been fun to really like be out and about, so I've just been going places. But, in terms of New York, like it's nice. It's feeling like spring weather, which is much needed. Keeps kind of going back to cold days for like a second, but then becoming spring again. So I don't know. I'm hoping that like from now forward, we just have straight up spring because it's a very fun time in New York.
Well,
spring and summer. Yeah.
It is, but of course, when you have climate change, climate crisis, frankly, you can go, because I was just up there, you could go from a very rainy day, which was chilly, to a very cold day. New York was in the 40s. And this is late April now that we're moving into. And then one day it was like almost 80. So the fluctuation with the environment is
it is pretty wild. And I've definitely noticed it. I've lived in New York for 5 years, and I've noticed climate stuff happen. Like climate stuff, that's not very specific, but I've noticed the weather patterns changing even over the short time that I've lived here. It seemed way colder my first winter here, and there was just some crazy rain. Like I guess it was last year, 2021. Just massive flooding of the subway stations, and even people in apartments passed away. And it's just the climate stuff is intense. I hate thinking about it. It's important to think about, but I personally like that and weed make me extremely anxious.
Sorry, we completely killed your high on life buzz.
Well, but the climate is affecting everywhere. It's affecting everywhere. It's affecting cities, and it's affecting everywhere.
If anybody's foolish enough, I mean, again, I'm in real estate now, Kate. So if anybody is actually foolish enough to either build and much less buy, waterfront real estate in Miami, I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. You're not getting your money out of that. I'm telling you, it's eventually going to get to the point where the sea level is going to rise so much, you're not going to be able to insure the property. The water damage is going to be too great, and yet people are still doing it. It's, but we're in Florida, so you expect the worst down here. That's just to be kind of expected. But I do think that we're at a point now where we think about like all because this is a political podcast, and we think about all the issues of our time that are very significant. I mean, the climate crisis really is the issue that has to unite all of us. It really does, because it affects us all. And if the president of the United States has the authority to implement the Defense Production Act and build a clean energy grid, which he can do, I think that those are, when we think about all the distractions, I think our primary focus really gets down to those types of core issues that I think we all agree on.
I hope so. I would hope people agree. It's just so weird that people don't care about the climate, because it's like, that's like, to me, that's just, I mean, it's literally going to affect every single person on earth. It seems like we should all be able to get on the same page, but I don't know. I think people psychologically have to, like, some people, like, I'm not trying to make excuses, but it seems like what's happening is some people, like, psychologically, to cope, pretend that it's not a real thing, or just live in sort of denial that that's part of their way of sort of getting through it. But I mean, we got to do something. We can't live with our heads in the sand, even though there's about to be more sand everywhere because trees are dying. Yeah,
they are. And I think that more than anything else is really a very good point about, well, they call it the 5 stages of denial, or 5 stages of, what do they call that? Grief. Yeah. Because in a lot of ways,
denial.
Yeah. So we're in denial still, but I think we're moving towards anger because we know that there are ways to actually deal with this, and the powers that be don't want to deal with it because they want to get whatever last drop of money they can get out of it before it doesn't exist anymore. And
that movie, I mean,
Don't Look Up.
people have made this point, but to me, that what was it? It's the Adam McKay movie. Don't Look Up. Yeah, the like billionaire guy in that movie, I just felt like was such like a perfect representation of this issue. Just being like, wait, let's literally kill tons of people just to make like a little bit, let's risk the fate of the world to make a buck. And it is just such an insane mentality, but that's capitalism, Yay.
Yeah. And while Will Smith and Chris Rock distracted everybody, David Sirota brought up a great point that there was not one mention other than when it was nominated. There was not one mention of Don't Look Up at the entire award show. There was not one mention of the climate crisis, anything. So it's just proving the film's point that we're not taking this seriously. We are way behind the 8 ball. And then the other day, they had that young lady, that scientist who was on a British TV show, and they basically completely replicated that scene from the whole MSNBC thing, where they're like, you know what's going on, right? Like, we don't have time for this gossip and denial of what's really going on. And they were basically saying, you know how many jobs you're going to call scissors? And it's like, wow, this really is right out of the movie. They just completely copied it and made it real.
Folks, I actually have to run to a show.
Thank you.
I am so happy to see you both. Thank you so much for having me
Thanks
on.
for coming on, Kate.
It's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. And thanks for stopping by. And listen, stay high on life, if not on me.
High on life.
Okay, yeah, and I gotta come to Florida while it's still there sometime.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Let us know when you're coming down, buddy.
All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Thanks, Kate.
She's lovely.
She's a good lady.
Yeah, but she's done with him.
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't. I just freaking can't. I went on the Michael Knowles show, just for anybody who is listening. I was invited to come on, and the topic was the ban on the mask mandate. The discussion was that, and the discussion was about the Democrats in the midterms and, my thoughts on that. And so in a lot of those cases, I agreed with him on a lot of those things. I don't support mandates. I never have. I was not invited onto that. And I was only on for like a 10-minute segment. It wasn't, it was a very short thing. And it wasn't like I was invited on to discuss the trans issue on his show. That's not why I was there. And I find in my position, and what I'm trying to do is you win more flies with honey than with vinegar. And for me to reach to another audience, you don't go onto a show, not talk about what you were invited to talk about, and just be confronting and just being like very, contrarian. That is not how you bridge. So to answer the person's comment as to how is that bringing people to the left, I don't need to bring people to the left. I need to be able to work with the people on the right. And that is the big difference between how you see things and how I see things. So I don't go on that show to call him out and be a spoiler and that's not my purpose. My purpose is to go on a show like that, reach a whole new audience and explain things like Medicare for all, living wage, and climate crisis, and be a reasonable voice on the left to them that maybe they'll come and listen. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't need to convert them.
And frankly, a lot of them don't want to be converted because a lot of them distrust a lot of what is being done. Right now, it's very hard to get people to even get out to vote. And I will say this, to those people on social media that constantly want to throw Jen into the left hierarchy,
love this.
She is the arbiter of all things politics.
I wish.
Hey. The more you mention her name, the more the name recognition increases.
It's so weird, guys. I am literally on a chart, and they did a graphic, and it's Noam Chomsky, Robert Reich, Marianne Williamson, me, Vosh. Who else? I have less than 10,000 subs. I am the only person. It's the most ridiculous
and you're like
thing.
you're like the one person who is like a political candidate. Like everybody else is like a heavy influence.
It's so weird that they really put me on this level. It's very bizarre. And what's even weirder, and I'll say this, it's like if anybody in that group that hates on me so much ever really thought about it and they saw, wait, she supports every single one of our issues, every single one. I am on the same page with them on every single one of their issues. And I think it's also interesting that they have Marianne up there, being that she was the only presidential candidate that had a platform for reparations. So I think it's really funny that like, but I'm very flattered.
Well,
I am on the same list as Noam Chomsky.
They also cannot hide their bigotry enough. Like they really can't. And that is something that also comes out. You know, it really goes without saying that we've got a lot of issues right now. We really do. And the only way we're going to solve them is if we don't get marred down in this useless circular firing squad. That's a really big problem. And to me, if you want to come after me, if you want to come after Jen, you know, I don't know what purpose that serves, but it really is not going to get us anywhere. We thank you for the name recognition. I know I do.
I think it's great. I'm flattered. I'm on the same list as Noam Chomsky and Robert Reich. Like I got to tell you, I wish that I had that size of a platform and that kind of influence, like that I could actually, like that would be great. I have less than 8,000 subs, but yet I'm on the same list with Vosh and Noam Chomsky.
But nevertheless,
so weird.
There are a lot of people that want to have us.
And I think Hassan on that list.
Hassan Piker.
Yeah, he's got a huge platform too. Like he's like Vosh-sized platform.
I'm not really a fan of his, but
well,
you know.
maybe not, but it doesn't matter. I'm like the smallest little potatoes, and it's like there's me, my campaign picture right up there, like underneath Noam Chomsky.
Hey, look, if people are going to be asking questions, let them ask questions. You know, yeah, of course you are, Sean. Yeah, we're trying to stop that from happening. That's our goal. Our goal is to stop the circular firing squad. We may have one more guest. We'll see if it actually comes through or not. Been working on it. But yeah, I think that the thing about today, and you know, we had a message from John already, who said he really enjoyed it. Hope he wasn't too preachy. I didn't think so. You know, that to me goes without saying. You know, we do really well with our guests. I like to think that we do. And we may not have the biggest platform, but I think our message.
The thank you was the reference for Pac-Man. That was the thank you. Okay, I'm so sick of it. I don't need trolls on the inside. I don't need people that are supposed friends sitting there and trolling us. That was the thank you. The thank you was the recommendation for the job you're sitting in now. That was the thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess so.
Seriously.
Yeah. John, go to another channel.
Seriously. Anyway.
We were very appreciative of the work that you did. We said it all the time. And if that wasn't enough, I don't know what to tell you.
I don't need inside trolls. I have enough on the outside.
Yeah, and quite frankly, most of the time that you show up is not to actually be complimentary. It's to be divisive.
Yeah, every time. It's just like you're seriously just become a troll. And it's really like today was just sort of like, but I don't understand how. I thought like if you block someone, you block someone. Like I just don't need this negativity.
People can start up and create a new channel or a new avatar.
What's low is instead of texting somebody a constructive criticism, is posting it in the chat and going off with another supposed friend in the chat and just sitting there and like mocking us and telling everyone how we didn't appreciate you. That's kind of low. You could just text. So seriously, be gone. I'm so done. Who are we waiting for? Someone that I know, or is it a friend? Like, who are we waiting for?
Well, we'll see. If we are supposed to be here till 6 o'clock. That is when we were supposed to come on. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to check the email to see if there is anybody who has responded to the inquiry. They may have, they may not have. Don't know, but we're about to find out. Let's see. Here's wait.
Oh, he was great.
John is great.
I'm trying to remember, like, I know who
and
he
to his
is.
credit, he's one of the first. John Fogelstein?
Yes, I know, but I'm trying to remember, like, but I remember him being in like a couple of movies. He
interviewed Bruce.
I'm not happy with Bruce.
I'm not happy with him either.
And you know what? That should be a little painful for you.
Yeah.
That should be painful for you. I've had those moments myself, when someone you really think is all that and does something that really isn't all that.
Hey, with this type, hey, listen, if you guys could only see this all-star lineup of people that he has interviewed.
I know.
A lot of Oscar-winning, famous the former governor.
It's funny. That's who you're looking at, like Oscar people. I'm looking at Neil deGrasse Tyson and Ralph Nader.
I'm looking at cutie patootie Kristen Ritter. She's a really pretty lady.
That's what you're looking at?
No, I'm looking at this guy.
Sam Rockwell. Roger Daltrey. Mark Hamill.
Okay, so Luke Skywalker is here. Senator.
Okay, Pete Townsend, Ed Harris. I didn't even see the beginning of that. Oh, wow, look at that.
Come on, The Exorcist. Don't like
Allison Janney, Juliette Binoche. Yeah, that's a lot of William Hurt. Some seriously good people on that list.
He got Ralph Nader on. Well, I guess anytime you're...
Well, he voted for him twice, so he kind of earned that.
He interviewed George Harrison. All right.
I voted for Nader.
You got a Beatle.
You know I voted for Nader in 2000.
Yes.
But just so I don't get like the bazillion million hate things, I was living in Texas and that state was going for Bush regardless. And I traded my vote with someone who was in Oregon in a swing state so that they would vote. They voted for Gore in the swing state and I put a vote for Nader for them. So, I mean, the idea of Nader being able to get 5% and it didn't happen. But the point is I wasn't being careless. Not that I believe in vote shaming anymore, because I do not. But who are we expecting? Who are you expecting?
Did I not send it? Oh, I guess I didn't send it. Holy crap. All right. Well, I'm going to send it now.
No, I mean, you're not going to first send it now. We're 10 minutes from, you're not going to first send it now.
Should we just do it another time?
Yeah.
He said he would come on for a few minutes. So.
You really pulled out all the comedians tonight.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe it was just a question of timing. I mean, I did try to focus on it, but we'll see.
I think it's late, but if he's only coming on for a few minutes, that's fine. He's always fun. Like, I would love for him or Kate or people to do a show down here, but none of them do because they hate it here. Judah actually said he didn't mind it here. David Cross said he hated Florida.
Yes, he did.
As far as performing, not as far as like the people or persons, but yeah, that was a fun one. I'd like to talk to him again now that we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
He would be a fun person to interview again.
John Haglund. I remember the name, but I don't remember the guy. So, yeah, we don't have many of those specifics that the two-party system is messed up.
Oh my God. Oh my God, be still my heart. I can't tell you guys who just popped up in the waiting room who is coming on the show. This is very exciting.
Yeah. Well,
this is very exciting. And you know what? Talk about not ever big leaguing.
No.
I love that.
Definitely not.
See, that's the difference.
He's one of the best streamers we've got. He's certainly one of the biggest truth tellers we've got.
Here's the weed.
Somebody who,
where have you been, Sam?
Yeah, he is. Yes, Sam. He should have been here. Should have been right here. So, you know him as somebody who has done some really amazing work with his live streams, fundraising for causes that are immensely important. Most recently, he raised a lot of money for the citizens of Ukraine. He is a streamer who is all up for the debate.
I've never seen somebody do so much fundraising through video game playing.
That's why we're going to get you to do it.
I cannot do it. I am not coordinated enough. No. I am not nimble. I am not nimble. I've got like Fred Flintstone hands. I have a hard enough time texting. I'm not video gaming. I can't. I cannot. The brain...
Fair thee warned, but people will eventually find out.
Those connections, I'm not doing that. That's like, it's just not going to happen.
Vosh, welcome back to Generational Change.
Are you there?
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
I'm right here. I'm terribly sorry.
I saw you and then you went away. Now I hear you.
I am actually recovering from surgery. I have bandages over my ears, so my my appearance is actually highly confidential. So I apologize for that, and I'm sorry for jumping in late. I have been so behind on my DMs.
No, I'm so thankful that you're here. It's always good to talk to you. How's it going? How's your 420?
It's been going pretty good, actually. You know, I haven't partaken just yet. It's just been coffee for me, but I'm sure I'll find a time to celebrate the holiday.
Yeah.
How's the live stream been?
So we've had, you know what? It's been comedy. We've had comedians. It's been really entertaining, actually.
We had John Fogelsang for an hour. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it was fun. And then Kate Willette came on, and that was fun. And it's you know, I'm just sitting here smoking my bowls.
Yeah, we had one buzz killer, but we dealt with it. So, you know, now everything is good. it's always a pleasure to have you on, and obviously there's so much drama going on these days. What have you been focused on?
Well, I've been trying to focus less on the drama. Obviously, right now the big discourse is trans people. The
Yeah.
Oh
whole they're infiltrating our schools, blah de blah de blah. I actually had a talk earlier with oh goodness, I'm forgetting her name right now. Hold on, if I check my Twitter DMs, I'll be able to see. Oh, that's right. Dr. Deborah So, speaking with her on trans issues, and I was hoping to make a document sometime in the coming days, dealing with a lot of the talking points that are employed to see if I can't help other people, construct good arguments.
No, I think that's awesome. And we generally don't talk about that only because in Florida, it's basically just like this political pawn. It's just the whole trans issue is just used, and it's used meanly. And I obviously it's like I'm vehemently opposed to all of those things. But I feel like in so many ways, they use it as a smokescreen to be stealing our money from us in other directions. Like they keep everybody so distracted. And yet it is important. Like I know it's important, and I know, but I think that they still do it because they're not offering anything else.
Yeah, the frustrating thing is that not in a long time has politics oriented so severely around like one particular issue like this, around the sort of adjacent progressive talking point. You had the gay rights movement and you had the civil rights movement. But in both of those cases, they wanted something affirmative. Gay people wanted the right to marry, among other things. And, of course, the civil rights movement was about the passage of the Civil Rights Act and all the problems associated with it. In this case, nothing is happening. With the trans stuff, I mean, there's no, it's not as though trans people have done this giant march in Washington and the reactionary blowback is from that. Trans people are just sitting there quietly in their houses getting high. And Republicans are frothing over it. They're frothing at the mouths. So it feels very deliberate and very targeted, and it's all very unfortunate,
Yeah, it's just mean. It's just mean. And what's interesting to me is how there's people now. Actually, we did a show 2 nights ago, and there was a guest in our chat who I had picked up from doing the Michael Knowles show. Okay, so this guy, and he had like the Dixie flag was his little logo, and he asked me, is this guest a transgender? And my response was, we do not check our guests' genitalia. And so that seemed to sort of settle it at that point. But it's weird that that's something that anybody would think of. Where do these haters think that trans people have been all along? Like, do they think that this is just some new phenomenon that now people are just deciding to switch genders? The same people have been amongst us forever and just existing peacefully amongst us forever. It's not an issue.
Exactly. And I think it really lays bare the fact that this has nothing to do with harm. It has nothing to do with harm, truth, reality, whatever, It's at the end of the day, it's about degeneracy. There is a fear of people who are aberrant or abnormal, and all of the political arguments are constructed to justify the targeting of those groups. But the sincere position is, I swear with a lot of the people who make those arguments, you can settle whatever you want with them. You could convince them of any empirical point. At the end of the day, it's an emotional bias they have.
Yes.
So it's pretty tough to argue against.
Yeah, it's irrational. It's completely irrational. Because if you even take somebody who's in that camp and I'm saying, okay, so then by your logic, I should walk into a ladies' room and see potentially a bearded man just standing there in lumberjack clothes because he happens to have a vagina.
That's
way more uncomfortable for me. I gotta tell you.
And there's no bigger pederasses than in the Catholic Church. Are we gonna pretend where the real crisis is on? Listen, it doesn't matter. The political party argument is so stupid. But if we're going to be really direct about where the pederasses are,
they're on the
right.
Yeah, and the big irony here is that one of the best things that you can do actually to prevent the sexual abuse of children is comprehensive sex education. Research has been done on this where, it's a lot easier to abuse a kid if they don't have the education to identify what's happening to them. So in a way, the right is actually targeting the most effective, because they're like, oh, parents shouldn't parents should have a right to pull their kids out. They don't want to hear this, that, or the other. Like, and it's funny because in a way, like they're contributing more harm than they ever ascribed to the opposition. It's just destructive.
Yeah. I agree. Put up Sam's comment because I do agree. Our friend Sam is saying that he thinks that this has been, since more trans visibility, it's become more hate. And I agree. But we need to keep going until we cross over to what's acceptable. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, we've had to kind of push through it. I agree. You're right. There were no trans bathroom bills pre-Caitlyn Jenner. And so, yeah, that sparked their fear. And now it's up to us to kind of follow it through and be like, okay, I get you're scared, but that's your problem. Move on.
Exactly right. It's funny because it actually mirrors a lot of the fears that took place during desegregation. A lot of racist white women, of which there are plenty in the U.S. in the 1960s. They knew black women were women, but they didn't think they were like them. So there was actually a push specifically to keep black women out of previously white women's restrooms, and the arguments employed there, it's this same concerns thing. Well, there's no evidence on the table, sure, but we're very worried about X and Y. And I mean, at the end of the day, again, it's irrational, right?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to completely sideline on the holiest of all days, our weed day, because that's also a really important political topic too. The fact that Joe Biden hasn't followed through on marijuana legalization like he said he would is a fucking disgrace, frankly.
Yeah.
But isn't that the bigger issue that we talk about on our show, which is corporate special interests have completely captured our government? When it comes to the core issues that we are really fighting against, you can have the wedge issues like Second Amendment, LGBTQ rights, abortion. There will always be that dividing line between the two factions, if you will, the biggest factions anyway. But when it comes to the issues at bar, whether it is cannabis legalization, employing the Defense Production Act to build a clean energy grid, expanding healthcare to
Real
everybody,
things.
a living wage, ending the wars. These are issues that overwhelmingly people agree on, and yet we're not getting them because corporate power has engulfed our government. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely not. I push hard for the progressive issues, but you have to do that while recognizing that at the end of the day, like they're the easy plan. I mean, the same with marijuana legalization as well. Like these are finger snap issues for the most part. And what does Biden have to do for trans people? I mean, very basic civil rights stuff. Most of it's already laid down. Not all of it, but a lot of it. The difficult work is the economic work. And both parties distract from that to varying extents as much as possible by taking opposite sides of this culture war business. Now, I still blame the Republicans overwhelmingly for this because the Republicans start these fights. They started the trans fight. It's not like Democrats ran out there screaming about trans issues before Republicans started crying about the bathroom bills. It's pretty clear who initiates it. But in either case, the ongoing discourse does occupy a lot of discourse that might otherwise be dedicated to stuff like infrastructure or a higher minimum wage.
Right. And they like that, I think, and they like it. It's political theater. And yet real people get hurt, And I also think that even if we're not talking about policy, how the right tends to focus on one instance. It's very straw man-y, like they go after, and somebody in the comment was asking about the swimmer, the trans swimmer, Leah Thomas, is that her name?
Yes.
Leah Thomas.
Yeah, I don't know enough about her. Actually, we need to have Mallory. I have a very good friend who is trans and is an athlete, and she has been she's always been athletic. She's an athletic person, and has really very reasonable things to say about this. But there are ways, people, to know whether somebody has been hormone transition long enough for it to be just and competitive. It's not rocket science. There have been studies that show this. So we need to just figure out what that is and come to an agreement.
And the problem is, and look, I do not agree with the whole Leah Thomas thing. What I would say, though, is that is what the right, though, unfortunately does, which is it latches onto one specific incident where you can have a justifiable response of this isn't correct, and then throw out everything else where it is completely justifiable and just say, well, all trans people suck. And so this is... And again,
trans athletes have been competing forever. Again, they're there.
But why is this a topic? The reason it's a topic is because it has nothing to do with real economic issues that we are desperately facing. I mean, you want to talk about a housing crisis? What we've got going on here in Florida? Holy F it.
Seattle.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're in Seattle, you know it as well. I mean, down here, you have literally a housing crisis, and this is the crap. that DeSantis is going around making the rounds with. And why is that? Because there's no Democratic Party of note to really compete against him. So he can do whatever the hell he wants. He's literally going to waltz into a re-election, Bosch. That's what's going to happen.
No, I completely agree. And it's frustrating because, like, first of all, conservatives do not care about women's sports. Like, come on, okay? The joke, the idea that women's sports are like a joke and nobody pays attention to them was like a mainstream.
You have a nice hobby there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like nobody, and the idea, like, they're making a national crisis out of what, like a handful of cases over the course of 5 years where a trans woman has done like reasonably well. We're not talking about breaking records, by the way. To my knowledge, none of the actual world records or Olympic medals or anything like that. I mean, it's just like one trans girl did better in college sports than people thought she should. Well, that happens to cis people as well. Like, first, when you isolate the variables, I mean, we have nothing in terms of a trend. But if you really want to, like, if people really cared about this issue, I mean, just leave it to the sports physicians. Like, that's their job. Like, it's very complicated. The extent to which hormones affect athletic performance, that's legitimately like PhD cutting research stuff. Just let them handle it. Stop politicizing it and stop distracting the national dialogue with. It's like that state bill in Utah when there's literally one trans woman participating in athletics in the entirety of the state. And they like, yes, we need to pass this state law to protect the people of Utah. What are you talking about? This is so fake. Yeah.
Well, that's the same thing with critical race theory. This ridiculous thing about critical race theory. First of all, nobody has yet to tell me what that is. To me, it's just history. But like, you know, it's weird. And now we have our governor banning almost half the math books because they have, and I haven't seen
because they're woke. Yeah.
Because they mentioned critical race theory, but I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, in what way would a math book? I am going to need to see the examples that got flagged because I haven't, and I don't understand how a math book in any way could be addressing critical race theory. Like, what is that?
Probably the math book mentioned that they're Arabic numerals, and they got triggered by it because it's like, no, actually, they're white man's numbers. Don't you? No, you take away from that.
What is critical race theory?
It's the actual answer is that it's a subset of critical studies that came out of Harvard Law, and it is a legal discipline essentially which focuses on and critiques the idea that law can be written and applied in a race neutral sense. So the predominant theory of law is the idea that when it's written and applied, you have the text of the law, and the text of the law is applied in a neutral and like fair-minded sense. Like that's the presumption that's made. And the argument from critical race theorists is like, well, no. Like, look back at the grandfather clause or poll taxes done in the South during the Jim Crow days. Like, none of those laws mentioned black people. You know, there was nothing inherently racial about their content, but they were still designed to carve out, you know, a racial niche for white people to allow them to vote while putting up obstacles in front of black people. And literally, I mean, it's not that radical. There are some critical race theorists who have more radical propositions, but that's the case with any academic theory. It's honestly pretty hard, like borderline, I would say, like just intuitive stuff. But when I debated Charlie Kirk on critical race theory right off the bat, credit where it's due, he conceded to me. He said, like, when I say critical race theory, you know, I don't actually mean like critical I mean like just whatever, race wokeism basically. And it's like, okay, we know that's what you mean, but
yeah,
it pays the bills, Vosh. I mean, Charlie Kirk is a multimillionaire because he figured out a way to really cultivate that movement, and then he linked up with, you know, creating Turning Point USA. I mean, it's so much of it is a grift.
I when I first saw the whole concept of critical race theory, I'm like, to me, that sounds like something you're teaching at a doctoral level involving like really complicated issues. But the way they're talking about it is that this is what they're trying to teach our children. And when I look at what they're talking about, it's literally just history.
A lot of it is literally just like very basic history that they do not want taught. They're lying when they say, when I say critical race theory, I mean the actual theory. When they say it, they legitimately do mean like you can't. And the funny thing is, the people who were behind, so the critical race theory thing, like nothing in our schools changed, everything was normal, and then all of a sudden the term critical race theory becomes this massive talking point. Hey, right before the presidential election. This massive talking point, and then right after the presidential election, it falls off. People don't talk about it anymore. Now we're coming up in the 2022 primaries, and wow, LGBTQ teachers grooming children by telling them gay people exist is like suddenly get libs of TikTok. Suddenly now we're hearing a lot about that. And it's being done by the same people. Christopher Rufo, James Lindsay, both of whom essentially admitted that the critical race theory thing was just a PR stunt to help them like associate people associate to like the left, like every negative ascription people have about any race issue. They're doing it again. They admit that it's a grift, and it doesn't matter. They just keep doing it. It's incredible.
How do guys like James Lindsay, because I initially thought that he was, I see him as basically just trying to copy Jack Pacific, but you know, they're more or less six of one, half a dozen of the other. But it seems like a guy like that, you know, really shot up. And I saw Tim Pool had him on not too long ago. And people gravitate to this guy, but yet he actually such a fucking asshole. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I guess people like fucking assholes on social media. Is that what it is?
Oh, he's a loon. Like I actually think he's kind of crazy. James Lindsay's Twitter is like permanent schizo posting. It's like having a meltdown 24/7. Like none of the shit he says even makes sense. It's about how like coffee cups are Marxism because they condition your children to get used to holding cup mugs which are scrotum shaped, and that's homosexual, which is gay. Like it's just insane. Like it reads. I'm making that up, but it does read like crazy. You know?
No, the people on the right are really angry about these things. Like they're really angry people.
Vosh likes to point out a lot that a lot of that anger is suppression of things that they don't want to.
Well, Absolutely it is. Why you only like if you really are comfortable with yourself and you're a content person, you don't have that much anger towards what other people do. Like it doesn't bother you. So obviously you have a lot of self-loathing if you can focus. I'm serious. People who are happy with themselves don't hate on people like that.
Yeah, I mean, people at the end of the day, I actually think this is one of the biggest failures of the left. People care about what they're told to care about. You know, you can keep people in permanent economic deprivation, which, hey, here's the USA. They won't care about that if they're told not to. People are very susceptible, especially these days, to media conditioning. So the issue, I think, is that a lot of people on the left think like, okay, well, we need to appeal to these underlying issues, like economic realities or whatever. You talk to a lot of Republicans, they do not give a fuck because they don't act out of rational self-interest. They care about the woke trans groomer Marxist threat destroying America. Like there's a big disconnect between like reality and what people care about oftentimes. So I think we need to do a better job of selling them that idea. Like it's not enough to just say, hey, things could be better economically, you're getting screwed over. Like you have to make them care. And we cannot do alarmism the way they can. I mean, a TikTok account, a Twitter account, Libs of TikTok, literally has been getting like massive amounts of money and attention. They just got hired by like the Babylon Bee. They've been on Tucker Carlson. And what are they? It's a Twitter account that posts left-leaning TikToks. That's it. And that outrage is all they need. That's the crux of their politics. It's very difficult to compete.
And I got to tell you, I've seen some of the content and I understand why people will react the way that they do and why they like that account. Because if you look, you see, and again, like you said, the left is a joke when it comes to cultivating support. Because the one thing the right is great at is finding the most obscure and out of sight, out of mind people on the left to paint them as the overall broad brush that is the left, which of course is not true. But if you really wanted to, you could have a conservatives acting crazy account and, you know, find videos of, I remember this one, like, you know, country bumpkin guy, I think it was in Utah at the beginning of COVID, walking around without a mask on and coughing and spitting on people. And it's like, God, that guy's a freaking lunatic. What if we said everybody on the right is like that? Well, you know what? You'd probably get an account that would get a lot of juice from it. So again,
there's so much. Yeah, but we don't, because fundamentally, like, basing political prescriptions off a collection of anecdotes is like the political equivalent of a mental illness. If you can just see a couple of videos and just go like, oh, this must be a big deal. Like your brain is mush. Like we live in the modern world. Everyone has a cell phone. There are hundreds of millions of people. If you want to craft a narrative using anecdotes, you can craft anything. Literally anything. If you wanted to collect a bunch of videos of like teachers from like the Bible Belt who are really conservative posting on Facebook about how like they're teaching God in the classroom, which is a violation, by the way, of the constitutional rights of their students, like you could probably compile thousands of those, like without that much effort either. It wouldn't even be. Do you know how many classrooms there are that teach the lost cause myth? The idea that the Civil War started, the North started it, and it was over states' rights, and slavery was like a wedge issue. That's like, not only is that wrong and bad, that's like Confederate propaganda. You could find tens of thousands of teachers who have probably done that in the past decade alone. But the left doesn't do this. The right is the one that bases all of its outrage off just a collection of spurious anecdotes. I'm sorry, I'm rambling like crazy here, but
No,
yeah, it's just very
it's true.
frustrating.
I mean, I remember even there were school districts that when they're being told you're not allowed to have prayers before the football games, they're local people, they're going to do what they're going to do. So there's people that are teaching kids all sorts of things that are not within what's even acceptable by their own state standards.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. Okay,
Yeah.
listen, talk to like literally any black kid who grows up in the South, and they're going to tell you about some crazy shit that happened. Like it's not like it's not that uncommon, you know? So
Yeah.
it's this insistence on anecdote, and the right elevates it like crazy too. Like who's big on the left right now? Basically just left politicians, you know? Like that the Democratic Party does not elevate people, but the Republican Party, who they have at CPAC, Rittenhouse, this libs of TikTok person is probably going to be a huge political figure for years to come, you know, because they're monetizing their cancelization by that WAPO article or whatever. Like they elevate people. Tucker Carlson does segments where he'll just look at people on social media and go like, this man's struggle is endemic to the struggle of all Americans. And it's like, fuck, they need nothing. They require nothing for their for them to form their opinions, you know.
And let me tell you, if Tulsi does end up running in the GOP, I mean, you can already see how she could easily be the vice president on whatever ticket, whether it is Trump or DeSantis. We know it's going to be one of the two. They really do. They're very militaristic. They really see everybody as family. Oh, you're on the right. Oh, you hate Democrats. You hate liberals. You hate progressives.
You're one of us.
You're one of us, baby. You're on our team. We'll protect you. You know?
I think we need to be way the fuck more aggressive. I like the fact that Joe Biden isn't screaming about the Supreme Court justice whose wife had texts leaked thanks to the Gen 6 inquiry. What was
Clarence
that?
Thomas.
They have a case to get him off the court. And
One of the
court was 5-4. I mean, it would change everything.
One of the biggest instances of Supreme Court corruption in the past century, failing to recuse yourself when ruling on a case where you're trying to prevent the discovery of information you might know your wife. Like, it's insane. But is Biden talking about? No, yeah, whatever. Just because libs have this insufferable, smug assumption that justice will prevail. They go low, we go high. So libs just sit there and cross their arms and think, oh, surely, you know, time will take its course and the wrongs will be righted, and I don't have to do anything. They did this with Trump. They did nothing with Trump the whole primary in 2015 and 16 except smugly mock him, and then they lost. Like I hate them. It's insane.
And I think you bring up an excellent point. We've got, you know, this can easily be transferable to the environmental movement. If you think that humanity is going to save itself, you'll already be dead. And that's what's going to happen. People will frack themselves to death, as the saying goes. So this idea that we have to be genteel regarding saving this planet, no, we don't. Because I want to live on it until I'm old and gray. And
you will.
beyond.
It'll be the next generation.
I don't know. With the way things are moving right now, we're certainly moving in a very bad direction, and there's just way too much of this. We'll just kick the can down the road. We really don't have that opportunity. And I will tell you that one of the things about the nihilism on the left, and you're seeing it again, because we're going to be in Cleveland a week from now, and I really think Nina has a great shot to win her race. Chantel Brown has really opened the door for her. They did a debate with a Cleveland Plain Dealer the other day.
It was glorious.
Nina absolutely destroyed her, and the Cleveland Plain Dealer endorsed Nina, which is a very rare thing for any major newspaper to endorse against an incumbent. So the fact that they did that, and the fact that these nihilistic pricks led by Jimmy Dore are still trying to shit on Nina because the Progressive Caucus is corrupted by corporate money and they endorse Chantel, it's like, you guys seriously need to fuck all the way off. Like,
the whole Jimmy Dore space is 100% like a capture and release. You capture disillusioned left-leaning progressives and you release them into this mire of like apathetic, spite-driven anti-politics, you know, like what Jimmy Dore, like in theory, what Jimmy Dore does, which is criticize the Dems from the left and focus on that, not really focusing that much on the Republicans. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you take a look at him and his community, right, like there's no real effort to build solutions here. You have people, don't get me wrong, voting Dems is not going to fix this country's problem. But like if the alternative is Trump getting into office, like, okay, that's a little something, you know, with the squad, like, you know, believing in you can vote in progressives, like that's good. It's nice to vote in progressives. But when you go down that road, it turns into this just like this morbid, like nothing we do can work. And then a lot of them end up going to the Republican Party because they get this weirdo wraparound belief that like the Republicans haven't succumbed to woke nonsense, which means that they're more willing to do things for the working class, which it's just a big wraparound project. It's very disingenuous. I don't know how much he does it on purpose, but
they're nihilists. And my thought is, if you don't support electoral politics, I understand that. Like, that's fine. But to go out of your way to squash the one person that we all know is like on the right side of things that we need, like, just don't say anything. If you have nothing nice to say, just say nothing. But to go out of your way to squash her when she's up against a corporate whore is just infuriating to me.
Yeah, I mean, well, his main beef is with the squad, right? Like it's when you strip away a person's justifications and look exclusively at their actions, the actions of Jimmy Dore are virtually indistinguishable from that of a Republican, attacking the hardline Democrats but mostly like the progressive Democrats, discouraging people from participating in democratic action and either ignoring or sometimes even like kind of endorsing the behavior of Republicans. Like, you know, you can throw whatever framework you want onto that, but it's that nihilism is a problem, you know. Like things are bad right now, really bad, and electing good officials will not fix all of these problems, but it will at the very least alleviate some parts of the it won't make things worse, you know. So I think we need to have faith that, or I guess accept the evidence that continuing to maintain that entryism is helpful to us politically.
And I look at it in a in terms of, Jen and I talk about all the time, the inside-outside strategy. We are in a very good spot right now as we have, and these things take time, as we know. But what happened with Chris Smalls and the Amazon workers unionizing in Staten Island, I mean, that is a game changer of game changers. And I think that that's probably the biggest miss between Bernie's campaign in 2016 and 2020. Because I think if that labor movement was at that level, if he was running again, it would have been enough to carry him in. And we're seeing it now. And Bernie is the one person who is attempting to cultivate what the Amazon workers are doing right now, because it's not over yet. The fight is not over. And the more we build that outside movement through labor is the more value we see in having somebody like a Nina Turner in office versus a Chantel Brown. How people can't see that, if they're being honest, is a mystery to me, and I think is a mystery to anybody. And if they can't recognize that there is a lot of money to be made by keeping people on the hamster wheel, then they're just not paying attention.
I do have a lot of hope for the union movement. I hope that we can rebuild like a legitimate, like labor, you know, push in this country. I really hope that we're able to. You know, I hope what we really need, I think, is we need a mixture of Bernie Sanders' principled like advocacy. Because the man, I mean, anytime you put him in front of a mic, what does he say? You know what he's going to say. Everyone's heard the Bernie Sanders speech. There's only one.
Well, look, I'll tell you exactly what I have to say. And Vosh, I appreciate what you do. We, as
That's
a collective,
good.
really have to come together and understand that labor is the future. And somebody like Nina Turner, Congress, will definitely make my job easier on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, exactly that. Every time for years, since the 60s. That's a really good impression, by the way. We need a mix of that and like feral culture war like participants. You know what I mean? Because the culture war is going to keep happening no matter what. So I feel like the best thing that we can really do is go like, okay, you want a culture war? Fine. All right. Here are our left advocates who are just going to spend like 24/7. They're just going to scream at the right over everything they're doing wrong and try to rile people up into a frenzy. But if you're tired of that, look at how we have actual political advocacy behind that. See? Look, if you get tired of the culture war, look, we care about unions, we care about healthcare, we care about the minimum wage. Whereas the right, they may do their culture war dogma, but underneath it, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just a distraction. It's the point is to keep you from realizing they offer the working class nothing. That would be my hope.
Yeah, I wish the Dems would jump on that and offer something. I wish they would really go out of their way. Like, I wish they were the party that I joined when I was 18. And even then, it was probably a stretch. But like,
you were 18. What, back in 2016?
Oh, that's so sweet. But like, I mean, I just like, I want them to be that. Like, people think like I hate on the Dems. No, I want to encourage them to actually be for labor, be the Labor Party, be what they're supposed to be. And they're not, because they're corporate whores like the other people. It's all the same. So like, I wish they were that. Like, I want to like them. I'm registered as one because I have no other really option, but I want to like them.
Vosh, if you want to explain to your audience on the next stream, just to give them an idea of why DeSantis is at this point ascending to the presidency, the biggest reason that's happening in the state of Florida is that the Democratic Party is not an opposition party. It is currently a regional party that is still under the thumb of these geriatric lifers that have been controlling the party since it actually was formidable back in the 90s, back in the days of Bob Graham, who is the best elected official Florida's ever had. But as it stands today, this is the party of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and that hasn't changed. And as a result, DeSantis is now going to get his way. The Democrats are going to lose 2 congressional seats. The maps are going to continue to be drawn in a way that screws over this potential movement that can grow, but it isn't growing because at every single point, it gets stopped. And not that there aren't good people down here. There are people that are high up in the party that confide in me privately that really like Jen, but they will not cross Debbie. Like, that's basically
They're
it.
so scared
Even
of her.
if you're on that boat and there are no, and the life rafts are running out, you don't know what to do, and yet they don't even want to attempt to try to go in another direction because they're so afraid of reprisal. And that is what has to change. The more we deny the fact that the Democratic Party needs a complete facelift in Florida and beyond, you are going to get a President DeSantis or Trump in 24. You can bank on it right now.
Like, we're trying to help the Dems. Like, we're trying to, like, what you're like, they need to have a platform. Offer people something. Biden, everything he could do by executive order and hasn't done is a failure on his part, period. And you can't blame Joe Manchin for why Biden hasn't decriminalized marijuana or a lot of things.
Think of something as simple as this. Joe Biden's approval rating is George Bush territory. And yet, if he were to decriminalize cannabis and expunge the 2,700 federally incarcerated marijuana violators, think about his approval rating will go to at least 50%
they don't do it.
overnight.
But they don't.
Yeah, they're saving that one, that turnaround for the next election. I get it's. Oh, sorry. I could feel my cough coming back. My apologies. I've had a bit of a flu.
I know you can't stay long, but obviously.
Yeah, I did want to say though, but before I head and quietly die off screen, is that I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. It's not COVID, I swear. But yeah, Democrats are terrible at state politics because Democrats don't fear their voters. That's the one thing Republicans do that they do right. They are terrified. You saw it with the Tea Party. You see it today with QAnon. Now, don't get me wrong. It's bad in that case because these voting groups are lunatics like QAnon. But in terms of like political principle, political parties should be terrified of their voters. I mean, the whims of the voters should have these people up awake at night. You know, they should be sweating. Republicans will do anything to maintain the support of their voters, including lying and pivoting on positions. Ted Cruz will just take insults to his wife, like whatever, just anything to not get in the bad graces of Trump, who holds the weight. But with the Democrats, they do not care what anyone said. There's just no, that they don't elevate people who are popular social media figures, which you can get tens of millions of people on your side if you do that correctly, by the way. They don't weaponize like media issues to try to get people on their side. It's complacency. It's what it is malicious incompetence. The Democrats exist to be the only left option, because mathematically only two parties can function when you have the voting tally set up the way they are. If you change laws, that'll change, but they're what they are, and they are the left option. And as long as they're the only left option, they have absolutely no reason to capitulate. They can just sit there. And I think a lot of them believe it too. I think a lot of them, like the Democrats, I think like Nancy Pelosi, I don't actually think she's like a Hillary Clinton type who's just inside her head. It's just like narcissistic, like power clout grabbing. I think Nancy Pelosi falls asleep every night, legitimately thinking she's like the vanguard of sanity and reason and progressivism in America. And I hate her for it because it's this delusional, you know what I mean?
You think she's that delusional? Really?
I actually
delusional than evil.
This is why you got to have term limits.
Wait, no. You really think Nancy Pelosi is more delusional than evil?
No, I genuinely think that. Well, I think the evil plays into it because I think for a lot of them, it's all these compromises that get built up. And in their head, they're like, okay, sure, we've compromised 8,000 times and we prevent all these left-leaning people from entering the party. And we do this and we do that. But we need this because if I didn't do these things, those idealistic progressives would ruin it for everyone. I think they actually internalize that shit. And that's destructive because at least like grifters will shift when the winds change direction. In their case, I think they just have this undefeatable self-righteousness that can't be overcome. I'm not saying this that makes them any less of a bad person. Don't get me wrong. This is not a defense. I think it's just a component of liberal delusion that is just really difficult to break through. Sorry.
Yeah, there is, and there's a level of sanctimony. I think that's also really important. And I actually remember our representative at one point was asked something. I think this was years ago on her vote on the surge in Iraq or whatever this was. And she was asked, well, the majority of your voters don't support this. And her response was, well, I know better than them.
That's literally the attitude of the Democratic Party and all their 85-year-old senators, just, oh yeah, we know. When Nancy Pelosi was kneeling with the I forget the name of the fabric. It was the BLM thing. It had the scarf.
Kente cloth.
Right. When she was doing that kneel, I bet in her head she was like, MLK is looking down on me from heaven, and if he were here, he would bow to me.
George Floyd.
Yeah, she actually thanked George Floyd for sacrifice.
Yeah, I remember.
So she is definitely. We call it. I actually do a story time called the Kente Cloth Tales, an anthology of tone deafness, and it's usually a story based on one of these
Ladies
things.
and gentlemen, imagine having Nina Turner as one of the top spokespersons of the Democratic Party. You want to talk about the complete? This is why they're fighting so hard to stop her. I think that's a great place, Vosh, to really wind down the conversation. Is at the end of the day, we are facing 40 years of a transformation in this country that we are slowly but surely starting to grab a foothold with. And it takes time. And that's the thing about the nihilistic movement and the grifters that play off of it because it makes them money. We're dealing with a time where Ronald Reagan completely changed the fabric of this country, and then Bill Clinton took it a step further and made it even worse. And we have been slowly but surely trying to work our way back from it. This is not the party of unions anymore. It is the party of Wall Street, led by a lady in Silicon Valley and a gentleman on Wall Street. So if Pelosi and Schumer are currently the faces of the party, along with credit card Joe from Delaware, that is not the recipe for where this country needs to go right now. It's a temporary situation. But I think the more we build up our momentum and the more we really hone our skills as a movement, like the GOP does, which is stick to the issues that actually matter, focus on that. Don't get marked down in the BS arguments about things that you can't fix or change. The things that we can fix and change are right there for the taking if we continue to build the momentum where we can. And that's why we're grateful for what you do and for what a number of others do. Again, anyone who has a criticism of Vosh, remember, guys, he did a 24-hour live stream and raised over $300,000 for Ukrainian families that are war-torn right now and are going to be for the rest of their lives. So I'd like to see somebody else try that shit.
Yeah, Vosh, I'm very appreciative. You walk the walk, man, and I totally appreciate that.
Listen, I just like video games and staying up late. Don't praise me too hard.
Dude, can you just convince her to do video games at some point?
I'm so not nimble. I'm so
Jen,
not nimble.
People like watching people who are bad at video games play video games. Just so
really?
you know.
How is that fun? I would imagine watching good people play.
Well,
like,
you're entertaining and personable and emotive, so you would make funny faces when you die. I know there's
I would make funny faces when I die, but I don't. And the other thing is, I don't like the shooting things.
Hey,
like
listen,
the first person, the shooting things and stuff. I don't like.
Vosh,
always Elden Ring.
Vosh, get her to play, and not even get her to play Super Mario Kart, like something like that.
I don't know, man.
That'd be fun. Jen, we can find something. Don't get me wrong.
All right, I will try something, but it's definitely going to have to be like circa 80s, 90s genre ish.
Oh, absolutely. I can feel my cough on. I just want to say one last thing,
Yeah.
and it's that. Excuse me. I know, with regards to the party as it is right now, the Democratic Party is going to be majority neolibs, like for a while. The country just isn't made up of hundreds of millions of Bernie Sanders progressives. But I wish in the Democratic Party there was real interplay. In the Republicans, when it was all neocons, well, mostly like 15 years ago, and you've had this takeover of like highly nationalistic, protectionists, fascists who have grown in prominence in the party. And again, I don't like either of these groups, but there seems to be a kind of mutual acknowledgement of their presence. The Democratic Party is borderline openly contemptuous of the progressives. They actively hamper their election efforts. They actively speak against them. They're clearly trying to push them out of the party. And as long, there is actual room and a need for coexistence here. Don't get me wrong. I want the neolibs gone. I want it all to be progressives. But as long as they're going to be around, if the Republicans win, we're all fucked. So in the meantime, it would be better for both of us if we could work and play to our strengths a little bit. But unfortunately, again, complacency, savior complex, liberal delusion, blah, blah, blah. I'm rambling. I really appreciate you having me on. Seriously.
Oh, I love talking to you. You're one of my favorite people to talk to. And, so thank you. And anytime.
Get better soon. Keep kicking ass and taking names. You're doing a great job. And hopefully we'll do a crossover.
And we'll see you with both ears.
Normal circumstances.
With ears, not like in a go way.
Absolutely. Please keep me appraised both on the campaign and on the video game situation.
Okay.
And it's just a hay fever. I just have a cough. I'm gonna go lie down with a cough drop. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Same to you, brother.
Bye.
Be well.
Take care.
He's lovely to me.
And again, you don't have to agree with everything. I don't agree with all of his takes, but I do agree that he is somebody who.
Yes, I like Todd.
Todd's
good. I mean,
Todd's good, Sam.
They're definitely not like.
Yeah, he's definitely a moderate.
Yeah, I mean, he's not, but they're a good guy.
Yeah.
He and his husband, they're really nice guys. I know them both.
Let's put it this way. He's not the type of person, he may be more moderate because he is a successful, guy and all that, but he doesn't loathe progressives. He doesn't look at people like that and think, oh, those guys are terrible.
And he's also someone that will work with all different people. He's a good guy.
Yes. 100%.
And I've interacted with him a few different times.
Want to give a shout out, very important.
Yeah, go up to that.
We always do. Satanic Cabal. We're not part of one, but Satanic Cabal.
I appreciate that I have somebody in my chat that's called Satanic Cabal.
We actually, and I'm a Politico here, but I actually don't know who Roderick Allen is. So
yeah, Alden. Roderick Alden.
Did I say Allen?
You said Allen. Well, it's a type. I don't know their stance on Roderick Allen. I don't know who that is. I'm curious. Now I will look it up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Sam, here's the rule of thumb in Broward County. She runs the county and she frankly runs the state.
But here's the thing, Sam, that's his sitting congressperson, and he runs that equity, the Hollywood, I forget the name of the organization. It's really nice. It's been a really good local.
Listen, Debbie has always been good on LGBTQ rights.
She
that's
is.
That's not an issue because again, it's not economic.
Right.
So, you know, the culture war issues, she's not going to be that person.
No.
Debbie is one of the absolute worst people in all of politics, both parties included, when it comes to economic issues, particularly regarding healthcare and a living wage.
You have a gay man fighting the fight in Tallahassee. You have Chev.
And she's also her absolute worst, bar none, when it comes to foreign policy. So those are where the issues lie regarding her. When it comes to LGBTQ rights, when it comes to abortion, when it comes to abortion, you know, Debbie's going to be on the right side regarding that.
The correct way. We do have that, Sam. We do have a gay man fighting for us in Tallahassee.
Carlos Guillermo Smith.
Well,
and he's great.
What about Chev?
And Chev.
That's what I said. I said
you got two.
Yeah.
You got two really.
And that's the truth is that's who we know.
And we have
there's
Michelle,
probably people that we don't know.
And Michelle Goldsby, but she's running for Congress, and even still, you know.
Yeah, you're right. You need more. You do. But the thing is that now, we'll see what happens now with the districts. It's not going to be better.
This is definitely one of the longest live streams we've done. But when Vosh comes on, we've got a good. You know, it's funny. He said he was only coming on for a few minutes, and he comes on for 40 minutes.
I know, because he and I can really get into it.
Yeah,
I know.
No,
I know, because you know here's the thing. Like I was a philosophy minor in college.
That's why Sean's a good dude.
I know. Thank you. Because you recognize what's real and what's corrupt, and we don't have to agree on everything.
Yes, and you don't have to say somebody's a useful idiot to the right to make a point.
Exactly. Now I lost my train of thought. Thank you. You do that to me on 420. I'm like such a pothead. I can't even remember what I was saying.
Smoke some more pot. You'll remember it, Jeff.
No, Vosh is a net positive for sure.
He is, 100%.
And he's always been really nice. And every time I've ever heard him, I mean, there's things I don't agree with him about.
No, of course.
But like, I just can't get into this if I don't agree with somebody and everything. I just don't want to talk to them anymore.
No, so
then who do you want to just always talk to everybody that you always agree with?
Well, that's the whole thing. And again, this is
that would be so boring.
Well, but this is also why we do not run away from our affinity for Andrew Yang, because Andrew is right about a lot of things. He's wrong about a lot of things. Like when he did his comparison the other day with Abraham Lincoln putting Andrew Johnson on his ticket. No, that's not a good comparison. A better comparison, as we had pointed out on social media, was Teddy Roosevelt ran the most successful third-party campaign in U.S. history. Now, everyone's like, but it got Woodrow Wilson elected. William Howard Taft is not better than Woodrow Wilson. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
The point is that we don't have to agree with everything that someone says to find them to be reasonable people that we can work with for the greater good. It's that simple. It's like, I don't know what he said that got people's panties in a bunch, and I probably, maybe I'd agree, maybe I wouldn't agree. It doesn't
Thank you,
matter.
Jazz Dog. Appreciate you being here, brother.
Thank you.
Please hit this like button and subscribe, guys, if you're here. And very important, if you like our content, if you think what we do is good.
And today is special. We're not normally
It is 420. So we're here early, but by the time we're done, it's going to be time to start the regular show. Patreon.com/generational change. Any support you can provide is very much appreciated. For as little as $5 a month, 10 or 25. What do you get, Jen? Well, since we do not take a salary, our money goes towards...
It all goes into our nonprofit organization, and we use it for doing service.
And what do we do service-wise locally?
What do we do service-wise? Well, right now what we do is donate money to service that's happening locally, like the community garden. But we also donate to non-corporate candidates and people that are helping our mission. Our mission of transforming politics into service. That's what we're about. And we could use all the help we can get, for sure. What do we have coming up? What do we have normally, though, for anybody watching this that's
Jazz Dog, believe it or not, this is legit. This is a real screen.
They're my antique shutter collection. And they all have a story and a history. It's really interesting. Like there are post-Katrina ones, and there's old ones from New England, and they're all mixed in. So this used to be hanging in my house, and then we downsized. And so I decided it would be really good studio backdrop. And actually we're going to maybe light them a little bit. So there's some light coming from behind them.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
What we have coming up on Monday, I haven't listed it yet, but I'm going to. We are going to have a crossover podcast. They're going to come on our show with some friends from before that are streamers. You probably remember Amy C3 from LA. It was about the housing crisis.
I remember.
The Cavernacle.
Oh, yes. Yes.
He's coming on. I am going to try to see if I can pry Mr. Streamer /awesome progressive himself, Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report. He is the one that brought us all together in the first place. Figure what the hell, we might as well return the favor.
I love him.
He's a great guy.
He is really a good guy. Okay, so that's what you've got going on for Monday?
That is Monday.
Okay.
And on Wednesday, guys, you're definitely going to want to be here for this one. Wednesday, we are doing a very special universal healthcare live stream.
So we've done it before, but it's really important. It can never be overdone.
But this time, we're doing it with an all-star lineup.
Yeah.
We are going to have Ash Kalra, the California House representative who did bring CalCare to the floor. Unfortunately, couldn't get a vote. We're going to find out why and much more. We are also going to have on State Senator Gustavo Rivera in New York, who is also the author of the New York Health Act.
Assemblyman.
Senator.
No,
he's a state senator.
It's state senator.
Yeah.
Okay. I always forget that.
Smart ass.
Sorry, I thought it was assemblyman.
And then finally, probably the most important one of all, we are having returning champ, friend of the show, Wendell Potter, former chief executive at Cigna.
Right.
Blew the lid on, we don't actually do anything. We just steal people's money. That's
The
my
ultimate healthcare whistleblower. And then East and West Coast, the people in our state legislatures that are fighting hardest to get state universal healthcare. That's really cool. That's a good lineup.
And we will also have on school board candidate,
local
John Moreno Escobar.
Local friend, Broward County School Board candidate.
Very important.
Yeah,
So,
local politics is very important, people. And we don't only,
all politics is local.
you know what I've noticed, like we haven't really focused on Florida a lot. We've been doing local politics in a lot of other places though, interestingly. And but when somebody does come up locally, of course.
Yeah. So we appreciate all of you guys that have been here today and have stayed with us. We know it wasn't the biggest audience, but we appreciate every last one of you that are here to support us. Remember, what we do is turn politics into service.
Transforming politics into service.
And if we can convert more and more people, not to the left, but to rational ideas. Remember,
that's the thing.
The biggest problem in the GOP right now is the fact that they are owned by the evangelical right. And what they're not doing, which they need to be doing, is having inter-party primaries with non-corporate candidates. Republicans primary Republicans all the time, but they all take the corporate money. If we can start getting people who are conservative to run in the GOP on principled platforms that are open to ideas like what we're all fighting for and are not taking corporate special interest money from big banks, major pharmaceutical giants, the military industrial complex, I think we're going places.
Yeah, I just think the key thing, I think that was really telling before when the comment came like, you're not doing a good job pulling people to the left. And
I think we're doing a great job.
But here's the thing, I don't need to pull people to the left. I really don't.
Yeah.
Most people agree on all of the things I'm trying to do, whether they're on the right or the left. Most people agree on what I'm trying to do. All I'm trying to do is get the politics to reflect the will of the people. So I don't need the people to be on my side with everything. I don't need them to be on the left. I'm perfectly content with, all the rights and whatever they believe, because fundamentally, we do all agree on the key things. It's just not happening. We're trying to get through that. So I don't need to pull people to the left. That's my thought. I respect people on the right.
Excuse me. Yeah, if they're legitimately principled, people that are hacks, don't actually believe.
I have a lot of friends that are conservative, that are whatever, but they're consistent, they're moral, they're like I have no beef with that.
No, I agree. So with that said, we hope you enjoyed it. We'll enjoy this break until Monday.
Thank you, Dirtbag.
Appreciate you, brother.
I love your cat.
Yeah. Well,
that cat has some seriously cool markings on it.
Yeah, I like it. So with that said, we appreciate you guys. Share the stream, and we will see you on Monday.
Bye.